Livecast in your browser's extension. It's a quick and easy download and will provide the best video and audio quality. We also encourage you to engage with today's speakers by asking questions using the Q&A function, which is located on the panel to your right. If that Q&A function doesn't automatically appear, you can open it by clicking on the button with 3 small dots at the bottom of your screen. If anyone is looking for just a dial-in number, you can use the same widget as the Q&A to choose audio connection, but we do suggest visual for the best WebEx experience. We also recommend closing out other browsers on your computer for the best connection. Lastly, if your preference is to view all the speakers on the screen at once, you can change it to grid view in the top right corner. For anyone not able to tune in, they'll be able to watch today's series on demand on our website or in the follow-up email that you will receive. It's not too late to invite a colleague or friend, so if you know someone who may be interested in either the topic or any of the speakers, please feel free to share the link you used to register with them. You can also engage with us on Twitter and LinkedIn using the hashtag BILivecast. And without further ado, I'm so excited to introduce our host of the day, Michael Lean. Michael is the SVP of Growth and Partnerships at Media Monks and is responsible for the acquisition of new clients and the further development of their current clients. Welcome, Michael.
Thanks, Izzy, for that introduction. That was awesome.
Yeah, thanks for being here. We're excited to have you.
Wouldn't think of being anywhere else.
I know, right? Nothing better to do than be here.
Captive audience. I'm in my apartment all day, so this is great.
Yeah,
hey everyone. As Izzy said, I'm the SVP of Growth at Media Monks. For those of you who don't know, Media Monks is a global creative and production partner, and I'm super excited to be your MC today. I've actually been a moderator before. I've been a panelist. Never an MC, so this is a first for me. So hopefully I don't screw up. Also want to thank my peers over at Media Monks for having faith in me that I'll do a good job and represent our company well. Also, Media Monks and Mighty Hive, 2 different names, but we're all part of Sir Martin's S4 Capital. Today we're talking about everywhere commerce. We've assembled a collection of experts in their field to talk about this. But since I am the MC, I get to tell you what I think about this, and I've actually thought a lot about it. As SVP of Growth, I've had the privilege of working with companies like Mac, Dole, Facebook, a lot of Fortune 500 companies, and they're obsessed with this, everywhere commerce. What is it? It basically means consumers are everywhere. And at any time, they could swipe to buy, but on the same token, they can also swipe to go to your competitor. So if you don't capture their attention right away, wherever they're showing up, they're going to leave you. They're not going to buy from you. So it's an opportunity, but it's also really scary. It's kind of an overwhelming idea when you think about it, that your brand has to show up across so many different channels in a consistent and cohesive way. So your consumer's like, oh yeah, this is this brand. I'm comfortable. I feel good. I'm going to buy. So why is S4 relevant? Our mission, the reason we even exist and that we're doing well, is because we make sure your brand shows up, regardless of where and when, across all touch points in a way that you'd be proud of, in a way that will make sure that your job is being accomplished in a way that your bosses or your peers will be satisfied with, and they'll look at you and be like, hey, that's really awesome. That person's doing a great job. It really comes down to delivering the right message at the right time to the right person, regardless of where that person is, so your brand shows up. So what I have found, the reason why S4 is doing well as well, and the reason that we work really well with Mighty Hive, our sister company, is that our customers like having an end-to-end solution, a one-stop shop. Regardless of what you're doing in a digital ecosystem or even outside of that, we can help you. What I've found is when brands are juggling multiple vendors, it can get confusing. There's usually this telephone game that's playing. There's lost messages between emails. There's friction. When everything is in one company, we've worked with our peers on brands, on different projects, whether it's social, whether it's the platform, whether it's programmatic with Mighty Hive. We've worked with these people. We know how they work. We know what they need to be successful. So there's none of that information loss that happens when you're doing an email to another vendor that you haven't worked with before. So we're really happy to have successfully executed this for a lot of brands. Again, if you're interested, reach out to me or reach out to any of these great people that you're going to hear from today. But with that being said, I'm going to let you hear from people who are much smarter than me, and I think that you'll learn a lot of good things from. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to John Fundensland, Head of Global Brand Business Unity and Marketing Partnerships for Google, and joined by my good friend and CMO of MediaMonks, Kate Richling. Welcome to the stage, John and Kate. I'm going to let you guys take it away. You can unmute, show your video, and take it from here.
Hi. All right.
Hi.
Hello. Hi, Kate.
It works.
Thank you, Michael. It works. Yay.
Great. Thank you so much, Michael. And thanks, John, for joining us today.
Of course. Of course. Yeah. Thank you, Michael. Kate, looking forward to this. This should be fun.
Yeah, let's dive in. So I know you've been with Google for about 10 years now, right?
Yeah.
In a capacity of different roles, today you're the head of Global Brand Business Unit and Marketing Partnerships. To set some context for our conversation today, can you talk a little bit about your role at Google and maybe your journey getting there?
Yeah, sure. I for context, my life pre-Google, because you're right, I've been here for 10 years. I just hit my 10-year mark actually last week, so yay. My life pre-Google was I worked on the creative agency side, working with a number of brands in different categories. And I joined Google 10 years ago as part of our US creative agency team. And the brief really was go make friends with the creative industry based on my background. And we had a lot of credibility when it came to working with media partners, but on the creative side of the house, we kind of didn't really have any credibility. And so what our job was to do was go out and say, okay, how do you navigate this company? How do we think about creative effectiveness? From there, I went into a global role doing a similar thing, and now recently pivoted into a new team. Our team is really kind of a resource for marketing partners like yourselves, some of the big six holding companies as well, and even some of the consultancies we're working with, and helping them really kind of navigate Google. Specifically, where my team focuses on is the intersection of commerce and brand. When we're a different player than say an Amazon or even some of the social partners, and so our offering is broad and it's it's very broad, so it does need some assistance when it comes to navigating that space, and that's really what we're focused on.
So 10 years means you've been through 10 holiday shopping seasons at Google, arguably the most important time of year for commerce. And we've especially seen, obviously, a dramatic change this year in the way that brands and retailers are working together. What are some of the ways that COVID has impacted shopping behaviors, both in the spring up until now? And have there been any surprises?
Yeah, I think what has been really eye-opening for me, so there's I've thought a lot about this question because I really like this question. And for me, what we've seen, I don't know that I've seen anything that's really surprising in terms of consumer behavior, but what we have seen is COVID has created this kind of perfect environment or perfect storm for use cases, right? And all of a sudden, I'd say, I wouldn't necessarily call it nascent, but maybe nascent behavior that was there and kind of bubbling up really has found the use case and need, obviously the opportunity to actually take off, right? So, for example, at the beginning of this whole pandemic, health and safety was top of mind, and it really still is. Obviously, as numbers continue to rise, it continues to be. But because of that, consumers are really hesitant to even set foot in a store, and they really wanted to see safety and health measures taken. And a lot of that thematically had to do with contactless options. And if you think about it from a consumer standpoint, it's really about how do I mitigate risks? How do I mitigate exposure to other people? And so where I saw some really kind of interesting things happen are in the area of fulfillment. Right. So you see a lot of things like curbside pickup being the norm, contactless delivery being the norm. And what I also think is really interesting is that COVID was an opportunity for, say, like a Target, right, who kind of pivoted away. They went down a path of building a new strategy a couple of years ago, where they were going to say, how do we compete with Amazon? Let's double down on our physical location, which is our arguably our biggest asset, turn those into almost like local distribution centers, create services around them like curbside pickup, same day delivery. And at the time, it was kind of, you know, people didn't really believe in that strategy. Well, fast forward to COVID, what they were doing and preparing for really paid dividends today. I mean, you look at their Q2 earnings where digital sales are up 195%. I mean, to me, that was really interesting. So fulfillment, I think we've seen a lot of change there. I also think like voice, right? So like voice, pre-COVID, consumers were, you know, comfortable using Alexa, Siri, Google Assistant to do kind of, you know, basic things, change a song, dim a light, you know, but there was this just kind of a small subset of kind of really believers that were leaning on those, you know, the virtual assistants to actually purchase. Well, today we're starting to see people, again, this is because we're home more often, we're starting to see people use these platforms differently. And specifically around groceries and household goods, we're seeing people actually start to buy through their voice assistants, which makes sense, right? Because where these devices are actually placed and kind of where you are in your home, those sorts of items, but starting to make the connection and link your profile to your voice profile. The other one that I think is really has been looking, and we've all waited for this moment, which is AR. Like, where is that opportunity? Where is that use case? When you can't physically go into a store. I mean, we look at Black Friday and we saw foot traffic down 50%, right? Like, I can't go in there and do the try on. I can't actually experience that. So AR is kind of having this moment where all of a sudden things where I want to try before I buy, right? We're seeing, you know, we're seeing different categories kind of really lean into this, apparel being one, you know, makeup, right? So lipstick try-ons, L'Oreal's been experimenting a lot in this space. I also think, you know, you see retailers like IKEA and Best Buy also leveraging that. Again, the idea is like, I can't actually physically go to look and check these things out. What does it look like in my room? What does it look like? What does the TV look like on my wall? So I think these are really kind of interesting spaces that I've seen. These were behaviors that were kind of there, but they found the use case and now we're kind of accelerating.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too. Behaviors turn trends that all kind of funnel into like the changing role of customer loyalty, fulfillment, voice, AR, like all the trends that you just touched on ultimately are just about building better brand experiences and connections between brands and people and showing up for people throughout COVID when the circumstances were changing so fast.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So on that topic, commerce isn't just about conversion. It's about how brands build loyal relationships with their consumers. Where do you see the biggest opportunities for brands to really show up for their audiences, perhaps through content, but also the shopping experience itself?
Yeah, well, I mean, you touched on content. So I'm a big believer, and I think you and I we've talked about this quite a bit, is that where we are today, the experience, brand is the experience and experience is the brand, right? These lines are starting to blur, and the multitude of consumer touch points, it's really, you start to have to think about, well, how is the brand going to start to manifest itself across channels, across the web? And how does that ladder back up to that bigger, broader brand experience that you're trying to communicate? Like, and so I think about things like content being part of that experience. And a critical part, by the way, and this is, I see content as both something that can drive interest, but also spur loyalty. You know, content in general, I mean, it's no secret during COVID, we've seen consumption just skyrocket, right? So video consumption, specifically on YouTube, we're seeing billions of views a month that we hadn't seen before. And there's really interesting categories too. We're seeing 100%, 120% jump in viewership of videos that have homeschool in the, you know, in the title. 300, roughly like a 360% increase in videos that have home workout in the title. Like, so those are real categories, and those are actually really, I think, opportunities for brands to lean in and build and kind of those are opportunities to kind of deliver on a bigger, broader experience. And when we think about brands that are really leaning in and understanding the experience, this is where I feel like DTCs right now have this kind of unfair advantage. And part of that reason is, they're digital native. They understand their consumer. They understand the different consumer touch points. They're actually controlling most of it as well. They control distribution. So brands like, I think you and I had an extensive conversation around our love for Peloton and how they've really built out a wonderful experience. And a lot of that is, the lead up, but then the kind of like icing on the cake is the content, right? And that content is keeping you in that world. But it's not just like new upstarts either. You're looking like a Nike who's made a conscious effort to move to a direct consumer model. And part of that is because they understand the power of controlling the experience and building a wonderful brand experience. And they are one that I look at and I go, again, content is a critical element of that. And they look and they see that 340% viewership of home workout videos. And if you take a moment and you look at their YouTube page, they've done a wonderful job of creating content around that subject.
Yeah, and I think that's a great segue to my next question, just on the topic of creative differentiation, especially with Peloton and the Nike example, and how they've shown up with unique experiences for their audience as well during the last few months. What are some ways that Google's helping brands build ownable experiences for their audiences, especially in such a unique capacity and different way to show up than their competitors?
Yeah, I think this is kind of like, again, this is where we are very different than some of our competitors, meaning we're very broad and our offering is very broad, and we're, we have a marketplace, or we're trying to build one with Google Shopping. We have a platform, or we have platforms in the YouTubes of the world, but we are offering, even in between there, we have media tools, we have data tools, we have a lot of things out there. And so when we oftentimes talk to brands and when we talk to our partners, we think about how, kind of 4 areas. I think about how do we help you, how do we help your products ultimately show up on the web, right? And search being the backbone of that. How do we help you use some of our tools and insight tools and audience tools to help you define who your target is, who is your audience that you're trying to reach? How do we help you bridge the gap from offline to online, and so on and so forth, right? And so this is where you start thinking about a lot of, data. This is where I think data becomes really key here. And how do we leverage our data to help complement your first party data, especially shopping data, and close that loop? Think about CRM and customer retention. And then, we have a whole slew of technologies that can help build new and differentiated experiences. So how do those become integrated into some of the web experiences that, our brands and partners are trying to build? So those are kind of like the 4 areas. And so from there, I think a lot of it ultimately falls on, and this is what we talk to a lot of our partners on, we're like, when it comes down to what is the experience and how do you want the brand to manifest across the web, really, because that's kind of what we're thinking about. And then based off of that, working with our partners to help shape that. And we have a whole slew of things that, based off of what you're trying to do and the experience that the brands are trying to build, that we can plug in or help work with to shape. So it is a uniquely ownable experience for everybody.
Yeah, so for those on the call or on today's event who don't know, Google Shopping, or maybe have never taken note, they definitely know, that Google Shopping is more of a comparison platform than a traditional marketplace. So considering, especially at the start of the pandemic, consumer and brands alike's frustration with marketplaces and fulfillment, and all of the things that pushed a lot of brands to go DTC, could you talk about how Google Shopping is uniquely empowering retailers and DT strategies, or what you think brands on today's event should hear about Google Shopping and know about the process of going DTC?
Yeah, so just to touch on it and kind of ground everybody in Google Shopping, to your point, like At one point, there were fees attached to it. We lifted those fees back in late spring, early summer. So we made it basically free for retailers to list products on Google Shopping. Those free listings, they're not just limited to the Google Shopping tab that you'll see at the top of right underneath the search bar. Those actually now are part of Big Google, or our main search area. We also created a buy on Google, so kind of a buy on Google tab that we also offered up for free to retailers. And what that does is it basically allowed us to integrate with third parties like PayPal and Shopify, so you can actually buy with one click, within the buy on Google tab. And so all of this stuff, though, by the way, is powered by our feed formats, and the way we've designed our feed formats is that they're easily integratable with a retailer's inventory. And right now, we've been focused on retailers and merchants to be in terms of onboarding onto that platform. Which, if I'm from a retailer standpoint, again, it becomes another marketplace for me. With massive reach, right? And so that is something that I would strongly consider if I'm a retailer. I think that same opportunity, but when I look at and I think about direct to consumer brands, I think first of all, just participating in Google Shopping, whether or not you want to participate and buy in Google Shopping is really kind of search at this point, right? And so that would be the way it becomes part of your search strategy. And so when I think about like the benefits of that, you get better ROI because you can actually optimize. It can drive more qualified traffic because all of a sudden you have a visual element and you have a lot of like basic information. Is it available? What is the price point near me? It allows for broader reach. Mainly, like I would say more so buy on Google does, because buy on Google will allow you to see your full kind of portfolio, really. So if you're searching for Tide, it's going to bring up all the different options that you have. I think those visual elements too, and that kind of basic information helps you kind of stand out and can help you differentiate from your competition. And then really kind of this integration with Shopify and PayPal right away will, allow consumers to the one-click purchase, which becomes, again, if somebody has gone to that level and they're searching specifically for something, to be able to click to buy in that moment, I think becomes really, really critical. So again, I think I see the value, really, like there's a real value for retailers. I also see, like, depending on what you want to do if you're a direct to consumer, like this becomes another avenue for you if it strategically makes sense. Ultimately, the goal here, and please know that this is kind of a work in progress. We have a lot of effort behind this. The experience itself, we're hoping to streamline, but right now we're trying to get as many partners on board as we can.
So circling back to something you mentioned earlier about Google's influence in the whole path to purchase, I wanted to talk a little bit about this notion of everywhere commerce. Google has coined the term ambient computing, making services available everywhere, like voice technology, to your point earlier, being in the kitchen and influencing the decision and the purchase decisions that you're making in the kitchen. How does this always-on mindset complement brands' need to show up in relevant ways?
It's interesting, that question, and I, rightfully or wrongfully, like consumers expect this today. We've been training them. Right? I mean, I don't know if we directly meant to do this, but there is an expectation of immediacy here, right? And so if you think about it, if I want to access any piece of information ever, I mean, that's the mission of Google, right? Is exactly that, to make information accessible. If I want to, access any video ever, for the most part, it's probably on YouTube. I want to connect with anybody I've ever come across that's crossed my path in my life. I've got Facebook, I've got LinkedIn, I've got TikTok, I've got everything's there. Any song I've ever wanted, Apple Music, Spotify, again, it's all there. And then Amazon's been training us to get what we want as quickly as possible, right? And so 2 days is quickly becoming not quick enough, right, for Prime members, and some now same day delivery in some cases. So, like, for my point being is that we've trained consumers to think like this and expect this, and therefore, if you've somehow moved me to the point of purchase, the ability to do that simply instantaneously kind of needs to be there. And so, for brands, the challenge for brands is, it's not one channel anymore. It's literally everywhere. And that's when I talk about the experience, like how do you want it to manifest across the, the path to purchase is not linear anymore. It's very fluid. So we need to, you kind of then need to bake that into your strategy and how you think about it.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting to the Peloton example that it doesn't necessarily need to be a consistent idea flushed out in different touch points, but at least kind of harbor back to these true brand tenets, which I think is so much like to the Peloton example of based in customer experience and through the content offering, like long term after the purchase.
Yeah.
Cool. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Keep going. Sorry.
Okay, so earlier we talked a little bit about fulfillment, which I think is an interesting point to kind of think post-conversion. So brands now have the opportunity to extend their focus beyond just the lead up to making a purchase and really immerse consumers across the full journey. For example, aftercare, managing expectations, especially important this month, with shipping updates, collecting feedback, and more. Are there ways that Google are helping support brands in solving that need?
Yeah, this is. I think it kind of goes back to the earlier discussion where we have this breadth of offering, and so we don't have there's no one silver bullet. This is where the creativity comes into play too. How do I make these tools work together? What is the linkage between them? So, like shipping, for example, I think there's a lot of opportunity if we rely on multiple data sources, first-party data, third-party data. We can utilize some of our AI technology that's found in our cloud offering, and you start to think about, well, how can I combine these different data sources to provide real-time shipping information? How, based off of things like weather, traffic data, coupled with inventory data, like how can these things come together to provide a more accurate real-time experience that can ultimately manage customer expectations? So you start to think about, well, there's the number of sources that we could, this is how creative can you get there. But then there's other things like the media tools that we have in place. And this is, again, where we start thinking about, okay, I have, you have post-purchase data. I have all this other data on your audience. How do we combine those? How do we think about your CRM strategy? How do we remarket back to the individuals who've already purchased, who've abandoned items, so on and so forth? So there's a number of data sources that can be utilized there and combined with our media tools. Then you have really practical tools too that I think are oftentimes overlooked, right? Like things like Hangouts. How can that be part of your customer experience or customer service experience, right? Things like Google, I'm a big fan of, by the way, like my one of my favorite things, and it's always my default, and people are always kind of laughing at me, but I'm always like, well, let's use consumer surveys. Like I always love that. And that's a tool that you can use to get real-time feedback in a very simple, easy way. So there are a number of tools that are from the very complex to like the AI, the cloud stuff, all the way down to these kind of simple, really kind of tactical, kind of basic blocking and tackling type of tools. And we have that. Again, this comes down to like sitting down, understanding what the brand's ambition is, what the partner is trying to build, and then mapping and working together to kind of find the right solutions.
Yeah, so on the topic of data, I'm just curious, have you seen any trends or like a rapid acceleration of trends in the last few months of brands being better at using data in a strategic and like effective way?
I mean, the way that people are using or brands are using data, again, I think it becomes an accelerant. Again, COVID is accelerating the use of data in different and kind of more creative ways. We're seeing use cases, everything from, I think, content creation becomes one that, is kind of a macro one, right? Where we're seeing, okay, I see a direct correlation by the amount of content in specific categories tied directly to kind of search behavior or viewership behavior. We're seeing that, which we had that information pre-COVID. Again, brands were leaning in kinda here and there, but what we've seen is a massive shift into like actually leveraging that data. We're also finding more and more brands really looking at and using kind of some data to inform creative effectiveness of their ads and how they're actually performing, how they're utilizing that data to make real-time adjustments to creative. We're seeing from a remarketing standpoint, we're seeing data being used in increasingly more, creative ways there. We're seeing an uptick in, some of our data tools on the GMP platform, right? So like propensity to purchase data. What we're ultimately just kind of seeing is as more and more brands kind of lean in and start to kind of look at, okay, what are the creative ways that we can utilize this and apply it to different problems? And I think the big thing is that people are just more and more open to utilizing it in different ways than they were. Not that they weren't, they just felt an urgency to do something different because the world is officially, it's changed and it will change. Yeah.
So on the topic of change, we've had a couple questions come across on emerging tech. I had a question around Google Swirl, which we've worked together a lot with Google on, and showing up for people through like 3D in different kinds of formats for models of products. Can you talk a little bit about that and what brands are doing in that space and their reliance on digital with kind of emerging tech trends?
Yeah, Swirl. So actually, it kind of goes back to the whole, this is where AR and kind of lens for us is having a real moment, right? So Swirl being able to kind of look and play with products within the display unit in itself. I think it all kind of goes back to the macro kind of trend that's happening right now is I can't physically, or I don't physically want to go to a store. So how can we, how can that digital experience, how can we take that offline experience that kind of and translate that to a digital experience? And so all of these kind of tools in the AR space in particular, I think are filling that void around the ability to go into a store, look, feel, and experience a product. So Swirl being able to kind of spin things around, look and explore what a physical product is. I think we're also, you'll start to see more and more increase. We've been doing a lot of testing around YouTube AR in terms of like trying, like basically the try on piece, right? And so specifically around the beauty vertical. So there's been a lot of testing going on there. So basically being able to try on different makeup, see what that looks like before you buy. And we're also, expanding into, we have tools like Screen Viewer, which allow you to basically build AR experiences on your website. And so if I want to see, it's that whole idea that IKEA and Best Buy, like if I want to see what a product physically looks like in my space, I'm able to do that. And again, these things are, I think they're all kind of filling that void of, that's been left with me being able to go in, or you and I being able to go into a store and actually, tactically touch and feel and experience products. I think what you're ultimately seeing is like AR is playing a role, voice is playing a role, content is playing a role, in kind of in painting a new kind of ultimately kind of commerce and shopping experience. And it's not just about the transaction, it's about everything that leads up to it, and then everything that leads out, comes after it as well.
Yeah, there's a cool question from the audience on whether or not you think nonprofits, specifically, I'm assuming like museums and more cultural organizations, and then also education. If you think AR could fulfill the experience that these bring forth, or even potentially draw greater audiences due to availability.
Yeah, I mean, we've done some experimentation, or actually, there's a handful of museums across Europe and across the US that have been trying to build. They've been leaning on a lot of our AR and VR technology to actually try and bring to life that experience. And I think there is a real opportunity from my perspective. One, again, it kind of fills that void, right? Of like, I want to experience something. I want to spend an afternoon getting lost in a museum, but I can't physically go there. How do we replicate that experience? And in some cases, because you have the visual element, but in like a truly immersive experience like VR, you also have the auditory element of it as well. So I'm not saying it's ever going to replace physically being able to go in and look at a Van Gogh, but you can create an experience that's super unique and may add, utilizing technology may add an added layer. For education, it's kind of the same thing, right? Like you can create immersive learning experiences. I mean, part of my fear right now of having this call is we're running a day school downstairs, right? So our kids are at home, and right now they're stuck behind a screen and they're on Zooms all day. We are seeing my kids are very familiar with Google Classroom, which is great, but I think to the question, there are ways, and there would be amazing, right? You could still go on a field trip. You can still explore, like imagine science, like your science class when you're in a VR experience. I think there's really kind of interesting opportunities for these technologies, especially for nonprofits, especially for education. The use cases are kind of endless.
Yeah, I think it's less about replacing the experience, but looking at it in terms of accessibility and reaching wider audiences. I know that's a lot of work we've seen over the last 12 months. It's not that we think it can replace it, but more people can be involved, and people who otherwise maybe couldn't if it had been in real life.
Right.
So there's a question on how you determine where to spend time on emerging technologies that I thought was interesting.
Where do I personally spend my time? Well, that's a good question. I mean, I would like to spend a lot of time on emerging technologies, but that's that's just not the nature of my role. I think where we are and what we're again kind of, there's 4 critical questions that we're kind of working when we work with partners and when we're working with brands on trying to help them solve. And again, it's how is the product going to show up? What is the audience? Helping you identify the audience, helping you make that offline to online connection, and then the differentiated experiences. It kind of depends on where you are, where the brand is, and where the partner are, and how comfortable they are, right? And I hate to say maturity, but where are they in terms of commerce maturity, and where are they? What can they do? So for partners that are a bit more advanced, we can start to think about, and we can help guide you through those, emerging tech conversations. Plus, what category are you in too? I think that's the other big piece that we look at when we see things, again, like the YouTube AR try-on piece. There are categories that just naturally work for that. Beauty being one, I think apparel is going to be another one. Those are just, the technologies lend themselves really nicely to certain categories. So, what is the category? And what is the experience? Again, what is the experience that you're trying to build? And what's the role of that tech in bringing that experience to life?
So on the topic of YouTube, I really have enjoyed talking about that in some of our conversations leading up to today. And injecting like the shoppable content and platforms and like Shop Loop. Can you talk a little bit about those and the roles that content creators have in the future of e-com?
Yeah, I don't think it's no question, right? The level of influence that content creators have is not going away, and it's fantastic. And I think what we're starting to do, and what, by the way, which if you look around and some of the other partners that you guys probably work with, how do we create the tools to enable them to actually, you know, engage their audience differently? And some of that is our engagement tools, and some of that is also commerce, right? So how can we get them? What are the tools that they need? So a Shop Loop is a great example of a tool that, again, this is kind of a new one, and it comes from kind of an incubator internally, and so it's officially launched. So there's that. We've got some interesting things coming down the pipe, and right now I will say we're in a beta with 200 YouTube creators for something that externally I can't call it. I would calling it like future is what we're calling it, but being able to tag products that are in your video, that are in a video, and being able to sell them in kind of windows that are above and on the side of the video, right, through kind of display units. And we've created new product pages and product experiences. And right now we're experimenting with about 200 creators on that, and it's in beta. And we'll see, again, like I'm pushing the product team to go, oh, when do brands get access? We don't know. We're kind of, we hope to see the results and learn and see if this is going to be something that's viable. But we're starting to dip our toes in there into that space by creating these tools for creators, because again, I think the influence isn't going away. I think the other piece, and when we think about COVID, again, just like some of the other technologies, like what is AR? Again, not, you look at the shopping experience pre-COVID and now after, what are the roles that they're playing? And I actually think creators are playing a really interesting role, especially when you can't go set foot in the store. AR is allowing me to play with it. Voice and things are allowing me to order it, but I lean on a creator for their opinion and their influence. Okay, did they actually recommend this whatever it is that I'm interested in? What's their experience been? Obviously that coupled with talking to friends, but I think that they play a really interesting role in the way that consumers are going to be shopping moving forward.
Yep. So there's an audience question on your thoughts on brand purpose and how that impacts brands you work with's approach to marketing.
Yeah, I'm actually glad so we are seeing that. Obviously we're in a kind of a politically charged environment, but what we've been seeing, and we actually have a team here at Google called the Human Truths team that has done some research around, and I can happy to share some of the stuff that they've been doing and studies they've been publishing during COVID. They have one called, and it's a funny title, like Life After Sweatpants. But what we are seeing is emerging themes and trends in terms of like consumer mindset. And by the way, the majority of it is based off of Google data, right? So really just what are people searching and what we're digging into it. And the idea of alignment with values, right? So value really matters, and this is what we are learning. And I know this isn't necessarily tied to commerce, but it is tied to the experience, right? And consumers are increasingly looking for brands that fit into their lifestyle, align with personal beliefs, and ultimately their goals. And so this is a very real thing. And it's been around, but it's becoming an accelerant. And now more increasingly, consumers are starting to want to know what you stand for. Do you align with my values? I saw a stat that, specifically direct-to-consumer brands tend to do this pretty well, or they have, it's called a kind of core to the brand. And right, direct-to-consumer brands are 36x more likely to get searched for together with a value cause compared to other brands, right? So we're starting to see it. We're starting to be able to validate that with real data that yes, value is incredibly important to consumers. How you show up and how do you actually communicate that does matter.
For sure. It ties back to what you said earlier about people increasingly searching for like workout videos from home, and then maybe finding Nike as part of that search process.
Yep.
Super interesting. Hi, Michael.
Hey,
Hi,
guys.
Michael.
So I'm the signal that this is coming to a close. I love that conversation. And John, it's interesting because you said that, due to the work that Google has been doing, it's kind of been raising the expectations of people. But at the same time, those expectations sort of bleed into what they expect from brands. If they're not keeping up with what you guys are making available, people are just not going to interact with them. And then now that we're in COVID, it's only accelerated what people expect from digital. And again, all that great product features that you say are coming out is just making it more and more of the expectation that they'll have on the brand. So if brands aren't keeping up, really, it's Google's fault. That's what I'm kind of getting.
there's a whole bunch of us. No, I mean, I honestly, and I'm preconditioned. I'm in the same boat, right? For example, like a very practical. I keep saying Target mainly because I have one across the street, and I'm from Minneapolis, so like I'm a huge Target guy. But I did, yesterday, like last Sunday, I had a lot of stuff on my plate. But I wanted to go to Target, but I didn't really want to go in. So I did, I did the curbside pickup. But I got done with my stuff early, and I was still waiting for my confirmation like 3 hours after I put that, that order in. And I'm kind of going, where is it? Now I can't wait around.
Yeah,
but I mean,
totally.
obviously I can. But these are just, this is, if that's me, but this is everybody, multiply that by the entire population, basically. We've trained people to do that.
We've become a tad unreasonable.
It's a lot of pressure.
It is. But that talk was absolutely fantastic. It was interesting to me. I'm sure it was interesting to everyone else. So thanks for kicking us off in such a great way, guys. Thank you.
Thanks.
So now I'm excited to welcome Josh Blacksmith from Kimberly-Clark and Toby Van Santvoort from Mighty Hive. These two know one another, so there's probably going to be some really interesting banter and stuff they'll be riffing off on today. Hopefully they cover off on toilet paper with this surge, or is there going to be enough? So with that, I want to welcome to the stage Josh and Toby. You guys are unmuted, I hope, and I'll let you take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Michael. Thanks for having us. Josh and I are super excited to be here. So I'd like to kick off by just welcoming everyone to this next session. And you guys are going to hear from really what I think is one of the leading voices in consumer data and e-commerce. Just sort of quick introduction about myself. So I'm the Senior Vice President of Sales, as Michael mentioned, at Mighty Hive. Mighty Hive is the data and digital media consultancy inside of S4 Capital. And so we work hand in hand with Michael and Kate and the team at MediaMonks to really bring to life a lot of the award-winning content and creative they build through data and media services. So as I mentioned, we're joined today by Josh Blacksmith. Josh is the Senior Director of Global Consumer Relationships and Engagement. Big job at Kimberly-Clark. If any of you haven't heard of Kimberly-Clark, chances are you do have their products in your house right now. So you could think of, famous brands like Kleenex, Cottonelle, and Huggies. And if you're like me and you live in California and they've just reinstituted limits on how much toilet paper and paper towels you can buy, you want to buddy up with Josh and maybe he can pull some strings for you. So, Josh, we're super excited to have you here. I will hand it over to you if you wouldn't mind maybe introducing yourself. Tell the audience a little bit about Kimberly-Clark and what you do there.
Yeah, you bet. Yep. Happy to be here. Yeah, so I've been with KC Kimberly-Clark for about 1.5 years or so. Was really introduced to the company because there was a strong interest to actually take ownership of the consumer relationship and start to build out a first-party database and an asset that we could stand up and utilize in a meaningful way. So my role is really a transformation role as part of the Digital Marketing Center of Excellence inside KC. So I support our 3 sectors, which are baby and child care, adult and feminine care, and family care. in all of our regions around the globe where we operate. So, but yeah, there's no shortage of opportunity for us to continue to take advantage of changing consumer behavior, in this space, and for sure. So.
Yeah, so maybe Josh, we can kick off. I'd love to kind of hear your point of view on how is the sort of perspective and point of view on customer data at Kimberly-Clark, at a major CPG manufacturer? How has that sort of evolved over time? I think from our perspective on sort of the partner side, we're seeing, for years, CPG brands were sort of viewed as quote unquote data poor, right? And they didn't necessarily have that relationship with the consumer. And I personally am seeing that sort of shift back. And actually, a lot of the leading CPG marketers, I think, are actually being much more innovative than some of the D2C brands. So I imagine there's been a bit of a shift in mindset there. So maybe you can speak a little bit about sort of how that point of view on customer data has evolved sort of over time at KC.
Yeah, you bet. Yeah. So predates me a few years for sure. But I would say that early on as a CPG, there was a lot of focus put on building third-party audiences, leveraging third-party data. An entire department was stood up around what at the time was called DDM, data-driven marketing, but very focused on how we're leveraging data to extend our reach and drive audiences, retail, to make a purchase. I'd say the organization probably made big shifts in that space 5-6 years ago, and started to build that muscle, continued to build that muscle today as that landscape continues to evolve. A couple years ago, there was this, not a massive pivot, but a reintroduction of the importance of first-party data in starting to build out that relationship. And again, that's when I joined the organization. And when you're starting those conversations with the regions and with marketers, you're just trying to establish a goal of make sure you go out and start to collect this information and hear the principles around what you collect, why you collect, and certainly how you utilize. And what I found was when I stepped in, there was certainly a lot of chatter, a lot of conversation around the globe about all the great data that's starting to be collected. The first conversation I was having with the markets was, well, what are you doing with the data? How are we actually leveraging that in a way that's going to create incremental value for the consumer, incremental value for KC? And that's where we're continuing to evolve. There's a lot that we are continuing to do to ensure that we're recognizing first-party data as really just another data source alongside second and third party, all of which helps build a richer consumer understanding, allows us to build better consumer experiences. So as I look ahead, thinking about sort of the deprecation of third-party cookies, that puts a lot more pressure then on our first-party asset. But it also, I think you're probably hearing this from a lot of others too, it starts to reintroduce the importance of second-party. And I think for whatever reason, up until about a year ago, most of the second-party conversations were all sort of managed in the space of sort of brokerages, and what do you have that I can use? And I think now second-party data is really playing more of a role when it comes to finding a replacement for the third-party reach that we have all become so dependent on. So understanding sort of publisher environments and understanding really all the walled gardens and what they can sort of enable through their own first-party reach. But then marrying that, of course, with our first-party, we're not taking any steps back from an emphasis on first. We truly view it as a strong marriage, a partnership between first and second as we move forward.
Yeah, so let's kind of dig into the walled garden comment a little bit.
Yeah.
You've got treasure troves of data inside of companies like Amazon and Google, and then John was just talking about Target, right, for instance. Yeah. And so there's probably a bit of a frenemy situation there that you have to sort of evaluate. And I'd love to kind of just hear your perspective on how can like CPG marketers and walled gardens play nice and deliver value on both sides of the value exchange and ultimately deliver an experience and ultimately a transaction with the consumer.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really interesting relationship. And I'll tell you, first and foremost, we depend a lot on our customers. They're very important to us and our scale, right? I think as an organization, I don't know if you've read The Founder's Mentality, but it talks about sort of how organizations, when they first start, they're disruptive. They're able to move with agility, and over time, you scale to a point where you become what's known as an incumbent, and you lose a little bit of that insurgent muscle, that ability to sort of react in real time and move as quickly as you'd like to. And you see new disruptors enter categories, overnight, and grow scale. And I think our challenge is we don't want to lose what makes us so successful today, which is our ability to launch a product and scale it with a real efficiency, very effectively. And that's due in large part to our retail customers, the relationships that we have, and our ability to distribute product very quickly. I think time we're recognizing the opportunity that we may be leaving on the table when it comes to not having clear line of sight into the basket. And if we had that clear line of sight into the basket, we start to really recognize the broader upside potential there is from a lifetime value perspective. I think ultimately, none of us want to leave an important relationship to somebody else to handle. If it's an important relationship, you want to be as close to that end consumer as possible. And I think it's just been you're seeing this everywhere inside CPG today, right? All CPGs are sort of, waking up to the fact that we can't depend on retailers to manage our best interests. We have to make sure that we're putting ourselves in the driver's seat to some extent, so that we can make sure that we're hearing from them firsthand in terms of, what are we doing to drive product innovation if we don't have our own relationship with consumers and understand where our products are or aren't hitting the mark, But B, if we don't have that direct relationship, we lose the ability to talk about our entire portfolio of products and really what can we do to sort of drive loyalty, not necessarily to a retailer, loyalty to our products over all the, the competitive suite of products. So, we're finding ways for sure to work effectively within all of the walled gardens. Everything's a walled garden now because everybody can charge for it when it's a walled garden. And it's important to us to make sure that we're in those environments, because that's where our consumers are as well. They're not just spending time. It was interesting hearing John talk about unlocking brand purpose. Fully believe, in the importance of that for our brands to extend beyond just functional product attributes, really to get into your purpose to unlock growth. But sometimes, like, our brands alone, we know that's not the only way that consumers are experiencing it. They're experiencing our brands through Target.com, Walmart.com, Amazon. So it's really important to make sure that we're building a holistic consumer experience that accounts for all those places and moments where our consumers might be found, and ensuring that we're putting our best, presenting our best selves in those moments. I think the biggest challenge with it all is, how do we connect it all? How do we make sure that we're not spending in 5 environments and hitting the exact same consumer? And we've got, I think everybody's sort of challenged with that to some extent, but we have, as you might imagine, strategies and ways of working that we're working through actually right now to make sure that we're making the best use of that environment as it continues to evolve. So.
Cool. And you talked a little bit about the portfolio of brands, and you guys have dozens of brands that have a unique message for the consumer, unique attributes for their customer base. And so what can you standardize from a strategy or even a tactical perspective across that entire portfolio versus what do you need to sort of allow for some nuance and flexibility from brand to brand? How do you guys think about trying to create some uniformity, but also allowing them to sort of be authentic and be themselves?
Yeah. It's I think the first place you always look to when you're trying to look to drive standardization, at least for me, the first go-to place is technology. Like, what is the back end that's supporting all these experiences we're delivering? How can we make sure we're bringing some level of standardization so that we're not reinventing how we build this experience every single time? I think in some places than others. When it comes to standing up a commerce platform, for example, it's easier for us to choose one, make sure it has all the modules that we want for a defined need, and then scale that really efficiently across other markets, sister markets. I think in other places, when it comes to like content management, for example, as you might imagine, traditional commerce, not so much the D2C, but really in the traditional commerce, we're managing, hundreds, thousands of SKUs, variants, images, and, sort of that ecosystem is incredibly complex. We're working with a lot of our customers' CMS, so it forces us to sort of move away from standardization to some extent. We can only standardize so much in that world. I think the other area where we have more opportunity and where we always look to is how are we standardizing consumer experience principles, and so how are we making sure that we're creating frameworks like value exchange principles, something to ensure that if we're going to be standing up a new consumer experience or we're going to be standing up a new D2C of some sort, we want to make sure that we're creating frictionless buying. We want to make sure that we're creating utility, we're creating economic incentives, we're creating community. And so I think that's, by establishing some of those standards, it just helps ensure that brands, when they toe into this, are sort of like managing it within the guardrails that we might say are sort of operating best in class. Beyond that, we want to make sure that we're being consumer centric. We have to be thinking about consumer behavior and the consumer insight first. I'll be the first person to say, I don't want technology driving any of our decisions. Consumers should be driving how we make our decisions. Technology is an enabler to that, right? So I think, being really sort of honed in, focused on what is it the consumer expects out of us in that moment, and then beginning to lean into, as I was saying, our individual brand's purpose, and using that to unlock some of those more emotional moments where we can build a real experience that consumers want to engage with us. I think in commerce in particular, it's really challenging to ever imagine a world where a consumer goes to 300 different websites to buy 300 different products that they make. That's why Amazon is in Walmart.com. It's why these marketplaces are evolving the way they are. I think within our brand experiences, we have to enable frictionless buying, because if a consumer comes to Huggies.com, I want them to buy in that moment. I don't want to make them go somewhere else to buy. I'd rather they buy us versus go somewhere else and shop us against all our competitors. So enabling frictionless buying is table stakes, greens fees. I think the second that you think about how do you drive step change, in terms of incrementality growth for a CPG, that's where you start to look at, what is a sort of marketplace model, if you will, or a value proposition in the space that creates enough of a pull, enough of a hook that gets consumers to actually go to you versus any of the, more traditional sort of marketplaces that already exist, already have all their credit card information saved, already have their own loyalty programs. It's a really competitive space. And the value for us at the end of the day is, again, like basket value, basket transparency. And so how are we making sure that we're giving consumers enough in that moment to feel like this is a valued experience for them, so that we can get the value that we want out of that engagement too? So
yeah, that's I like that last point. I'd love to maybe elaborate on that. Obviously, you guys are you're trying to build direct to consumer channels, but obviously a lot of the transactions are happening outside of your four walls, right? And so,
yeah,
how do you think about building relationships with consumers to, I guess, number one, to support those D2C channels, but also if you think about sort of what we kicked off here, is how do you do that in a way that allows you to actually capture more data?
Yeah.
And imagine that's brand to brand, but is there a general sort of philosophy on how you build that relationship and actually, create a value exchange where you get some interesting data?
Yeah, it's not easy, right? I think for CPGs that do depend on retail quite a bit, I think when you don't have a direct transactional relationship, whether that's D2C or even, frankly, even coupons, if you don't have coupons that you can see redemptions at the one-to-one level, or sampling, or a loyalty program. So there are a bunch of different sort of areas that fall into that, what I would say that transactional space that allow you to get richer understanding of one-to-one behavior and give you the ability to pull different levers to try to drive that basket growth. But outside of that, the bulk of our business, to your point, is done outside of those sorts of environments, and so that's where it becomes important for us to find ways to, again, lean into purpose. A lot of focus we have is around design thinking. How do we make sure that we understand what consumers are thinking, feeling, and doing at every stage in their journey with us in our brands, so that we can look for white space opportunities or pain points in their current experience, go deep into those moments. If it's a competitive advantage for us and we have the ability through our either through our products or our purpose to deliver a better experience, it's a great place for us to lean in and invest, right? Because it's going to give us the opportunity to pull a lot of those eyeballs our way. It's going to give us a chance to deepen that relationship. So we're taking a hard look at some of the current value propositions that we have in market. In Korea, for example, we have an amazing D2C experience. Has over 80% of moms are already a part of this platform called MomQ. It's a very unique market in that so much of the business in that market is already done through mobile. It's a very digital commerce driven market. But the fact that we have a platform that has that kind of, mom representation has driven so much engagement, so much retail sales through that digital channel, some of it D2C. We have retail partners as a part of that exact same experience. But it's driven so much that we're able to sell listing fees in that market to other, brands that are looking to get to this mom audience that we've, so that's at the one end. That's like that's what our ambition is for a lot of our brands around the world. We'd love to sort of continue to evolve in that way. I think on the other end of it, we look at how do we take programs like our Huggies Rewards program that in the past was maybe a bit hard for consumers to find, if we're not spending enough A&P behind it to get the message out there. If consumers don't already have awareness of this program, how do we take that and evolve that in a way that gets it in front of more of our target? And so it was in the news recently, but we just relaunched Huggies Rewards in partnership with Fetch Rewards as a strong partner for us in that, already within a few months, surpassing sort of our numbers in terms of numbers of consumers that are not only opted into the new program we've built, but also engaging in a regular way through this program. So, it's continuous test and learn. It's bringing agility and a product mindset to the experiences we do have, and never being satisfied with sort of where we're at today, but always looking at how can we continue to grow and build on this experience. It seems to be getting some traction with consumers, And the last point I'll make on that, I think you heard me say like the value exchange principles. Again, like going through that sort of design thinking and understanding where the pain points are, what are consumers after. It's on us to make sure that we're finding ways that create enough value for consumers to want to just hand over their data. I think consumers are more and more skeptical, and we're seeing that through the legislation. But we're taking active steps, not only to just meet the bar of legislation, but to truly provide transparency to consumers around what we're collecting and how we're utilizing it. Because our hope is that we're never going to be a brand that's sort of attached to poor use of data, we want to be that brand that's sort of seen as a gold standard for how to responsibly use data. We want to be a good steward of the trust consumers are placing in us. And we understand the reputational impact this sort of first-party data space plays. So a lot of focus inside the organization on making sure we're taking the right steps there for sure.
That's cool. You guys have you've been undergoing quite a bit of transformation and really sort of breaking some of the old models. So maybe kind of zooming out, a broader question. How do you guys approach digital transformation? Are there frameworks you use that you've found to be effective? And then maybe a second part of that question would be around how do you take sort of a traditional company and bring folks along for the ride and get them bought into sort of the new way of thinking?
Yeah, we've built really a proprietary approach to to how we want to actually start to drive transformation inside the organization. It was interesting because I'm going to say about a year ago, roughly, Allison Lewis, she's the Chief Growth Officer. She joined KC And it was really great because I'll tell you, within a matter of a couple months, when she did her world tour, she came back and recognized the fact that we had a lot of great activity inside the organization globally, a lot of great forward-leaning, activity. But what she realized was that we didn't have really a program around it, a way to sort of make sure that we were driving on the right things, that we're going to drive the best value for the organization in the most efficient way, as quickly as we wanted to. And so what we did is really in February, earlier this year, we kicked off a new process internally where now got ways to sort of drive agile products through the organization, where we're sort of choosing, a prototype. We're building solutions against that prototype to make sure that we're sort of incubating it, allowing that group to sort of focus, solve the problem. And then we have a clear way stood up to ensure that these things can easily scale around the globe after that. At the end of the day, it comes down to having the right executive level leadership, sponsorship. For us, it's been a huge breakthrough. Just having Mike Hsu at the helm, recognizing the fact that this is a key need for us as an organization, and investing behind it, not just in digital, but across all of our areas of commercial transformation, really, to ensure that we're building the right energy behind the right big bets, and establishing clear ways of working that are going to allow us to drive the right kinds of outcome.
So yeah, so you kicked off, interesting timing, right? You kicked off that sort of new process in February, and then the pandemic hit.
Yeah.
I'd love to sort of hear, like, did that
literally weeks after? Yeah.
Yeah, did that what was good that came out of that, or what did you have to sort of pivot and change the way you thought about it, or did it actually just help you accelerate sort of this new approach?
Yeah, that's exactly it. It really helped accelerate. I'd say that the things that we've been doing since COVID hit were absolutely on the radar, on the roadmap. But certain elements of that, as you might expect, were absolutely where they might have been a year out, they became top priority. And so it was, I would say, for an organization, and all CPGs are sort of in this space where you're trying to manage the today with an eye on tomorrow. And how do you not lose the quarter, but make sure you're placing the right strategic bets so that, 10 years from now, you're not losing every quarter. The interesting dynamics of what the pandemic has sort of forced on a lot of organizations, even outside of CPG, is to take things in terms of the digital revolution, as digital continues to become, we've seen that, step change in how consumers are buying. And we know that in 2021, the light's at the end of the tunnel, thank goodness, right? Sometime in 2021, we're going to see a return to some sort of new norm. That new norm is more than likely going to include some sort of uptick in physical, but I do think that the world of digital is forever changed, and I think that the transformation journey that we've been on has truly benefited by being in such a digital sort of centric world for the last 10 months and through the next 5 or 6 months. It's just helped all of us sort of establish the importance of this as a way of working, and driven the kinds of investment and prioritized focus that we've all needed. That's been really great.
Yeah, it's good. It's good to find a bit of a silver lining in it.
There's a silver lining, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So how is it? How has COVID-19 sort of changed the way you guys think about engaging with consumers? And then, as we return to some sort of quote unquote normal, what do you think sort of remains from the pandemic that sort of is going to just remain and be sort of the status quo that you guys will need to consider in how you communicate?
Yeah. I think again, I think the main thing that has changed in terms of how we communicate with consumers, it's just placed even more importance on our ability to sort of manage the digital path to purchase. I think enabling frictionless buying experiences and ensuring that we're building the right infrastructure from a data perspective to really truly manage orchestration, and make sure that we're being helpful to consumers in those key moments. Things that, again, on the roadmap, but it just put a real focus on sort of the importance of tackling those sorts of things now, because we could see the more immediate impact it was going to have on the bottom line, if we didn't sort of start to accommodate those needs. And so what I would say is we're on a good we're on a good trajectory now. I would say I love the path that we're on. You know, the transformation we've already gone through in a year and a half is sort of mind-numbing. It's hard to even articulate, you know, sort of how much has really shifted in just 18 months here. But I couldn't be more excited about the foundation that's been laid, the roadmap that we have, and the opportunities that we're pressing into next year. It's pretty great. So.
Yeah. So you talk about you know, frictionless buying and creating you know, the opportunity for consumers to engage more with you guys. And maybe if we could kind of drill down on technology a little bit. You know, Kate and John were talking about some of the new formats out there and AR and VR, and you know, we hear about voice and experiential. How are you guys sort of evaluating this holistically? Like, how do you think about new technology? How do you sort of vet where that fits in your mix? And what do you think are the next big opportunities for CPG brands that are trying to innovate?
Yeah. First of all, I think there are sort of two schools of thought when it comes to you know, establishing the technology infrastructure that is needed. I think for me, anyhow, one has always been, you know, this idea of build it and they will come. The other is, no, let's build it on demand. And I think I'm lucky enough to work with a team of professionals inside KC that sort of had the foresight, you know, to sort of go the path of build it and they will come. You know, understanding there was going to be a need for this kind of infrastructure and getting out ahead of it before the marketers, you know, before our markets are even necessarily pulling it through. And so I think as I look ahead, you know, a lot of what we have foundationally is a stack that we're continuing to sort of drive our own capabilities internally in terms of how do we utilize the pieces that we already have to their fullest extent. Because I would say the challenge is not necessarily, you know, 9 times out of 10, if you hear that there's like a challenge with a specific piece of technology, it may not be the technology that's actually, you know, struggling. It's more so sort of like, how do we actually make use of that the right way? You know, so we're going through the sort of maturity curve of now that we have this technology stack in place, how are we going to unlock it as best we can to drive the full potential, the full value out of that? But as we look ahead, you know, we're always looking for innovative ways to stand up alphas or betas with different technology partners in key markets where it makes sense, because again, it has to be all for sort of unlocking a consumer benefit and driven by an insight that we have in that market or for that sector. But I'd say the areas that I'm most focused on right now as an organization would be, you've heard me say frictionless buying, anything that can ease that buying experience. And even more so if it eases the buying experience and gives us first party data in the process. You know, and so we've got different pilots that we're running with some vendors, some partners that do have real-time APIs with a lot of our existing customers on both product and pricing. So consumers can buy products through our experience where we get the basket level understanding, but still fulfill through our customers. And that's really interesting technology for us because, again, it gets us closest to that consumer transaction, helps us understand lifetime value, what are they buying or not buying, and where's the upside opportunity there. Another technology I'd say we're really focused on, anything in the real-time interaction management or RTIM space. And this isn't necessarily mutually exclusive of frictionless buying, but this is about looking for, you know, opportunities for, you know, for example, forcing a pop-up box if somebody has a certain amount of dwell time on a page or scrolled or clicked a certain number of times, to make sure that we're driving a sampling opportunity in that moment, right? And the last I would say is, you know, I'm really looking at orchestration. You know, how do we best connect the worlds of the known and the unknown? We have a really great handle on identity resolution, identity management. We have a great handle on first-party data and management. Now, how do we make sure that we're managing for sufficiency across both of these worlds so that we're not overspending, you know, against the same consumer? If we have, for example, an email address for a consumer we can suppress them perhaps in some of our paid media spend if they're an Engage or an email. So let's think about this ecosystem together so we can extend our reach and extend our budgets in a way that makes the most sense. I'd love to say that like voice AR, like those are definitely like, we have those sort of on the fringe as opportunities and absolutely looking for pilot opportunities. I think sometimes it's challenging because the scale is just not there. Voice is everywhere. The challenge is it's really tough to find skills or actions right now. The discoverability of the space is challenging to a certain extent, specifically when it comes to Amazon with some of the skills. And also like data security is a bit of a concern in the voice space still, like with some of the things that were happening a year or so ago. So we've always got our eyes on these, and we're sort of watching them and having conversations with the teams in those spaces to make sure that at some point, if it hits the right inflection point, it's a space that we would jump into to make sure that we're getting our fair share within that environment.
That's very cool. Yeah, we got a bunch of interesting questions from the audience. One of which you sort of addressed, but I might ask you to expand on a bit. Was can you highlight some of your most successful partnerships while at Kimberly-Clark? You just spoke about a few areas that you guys have seen success, but the second part of the question I thought was interesting was are any of those partnerships that surprised you, like you didn't expect them to deliver the results or perform in a way that they did? Anything that just sort of, whether that was COVID related or otherwise, anything that surprised you out of those partnerships?
Yeah, it's I'll tell you, I'm sure everybody on this call has experienced this in some fashion or another. The number of technology providers and partners out there is, I mean, we've seen this on like chiefmartech.com, right? Scott Brinker's ever evolving MarTech landscape. Over 8,000, I think there's even more than that because it was, sort of crowdsourced in this last year. But one of my biggest fears is that I'm missing out on something, that I should really know about, because it could drive like ridiculous incremental growth for us if we actually had it on my radar, and so it's really challenging. I think I've gotten to a point where I try to just dream up the right consumer experience, because my going in assumption now is that there's a partner out there that can solve for that. If I can dream it up, somebody else has already dreamed it up. Now I just need to go find the right tool to help me do it best, But I'd say, if I were to throw a couple of partners out there, we've Salesforce is a big partner of ours. I think everybody has a cloud partner of some sort, but we continue to be impressed with some of the ways that they're connecting an ecosystem. But we've got a number of partnerships outside of that, different technologies that we've leveraged when it comes to whether it's ad serving or sort of creative iteration, different technologies that we're deploying to try to drive breakthrough ways of working in more of a pilot environment. I can't even tell you how many different pilots we have rolling at any given time. We get the results of those pilots and look for key ways to start to scale those around the globe. So it's an exciting space, but like I was saying, kind of an overwhelming space as well. That that we're all, I think, trying to crack to some extent.
Yeah, how much of, when you guys identify a new opportunity, whether it's a piece of technology or some sort of solution out there, how much of that is coming from you or your team internally, just having your finger on the pulse and knowing what's available out there, versus how much do you rely on agencies or consultancies to sort of help you track down the solutions that sort of match that desired customer experience that you described?
Yeah, I'd say it's I'll tell you, before coming to Kimberly-Clark, I spent roughly 2 decades working inside various agencies. So very familiar with sort of the agency landscape. One of the big reasons why I came to KC is because I was interested in coming into a brand that understood the value that agencies could contribute 100%, but also was able to sort of lean into its own internal teams and understanding to drive key business decisions, not become overly dependent. And I think what we found at KC is a really great balance to that point. I think we we'll take calls on a regular basis if we'll run our own RFIs, right, on a regular basis, or RFPs for certain core technology needs that we've identified, and then as you guys know, like that means if we're exploring a new space, there's a new one that's coming up for us right now. That means we've got meetings with 10 different vendors, 10 different potential partners that are showing up on our calendars to make sure that we are building our own understanding of what the total landscape looks like, and then honing in on what is the specific need that we think we need to go solve for. At the same time, we depend for sure and hope for and expect to have agency partners that understand the space or experts in the space as well, so that we can bring that perspective to the table, so that we're making decisions that are not only going to be best for our needs, but also will work best with what our agency partners are needing as well. So there's a lot of mutual respect there to ensure that we're building a solution together with full transparency, just to ensure that we're all sort of co-creating the solution, if you will.
Yep. Another question, sort of shifting gears, was someone asked, how has your media plan changed since the pandemic, and how will they evolve long-term with the current state of the economy? And it was one of the things I thought about asking was around, how does the sort of like, how much, the consumer journey is very fragmented and is much more omni-channel approach to things. So I think sort of aligning with this question from a media mix perspective, and I know you don't necessarily touch media, but if you have a perspective on where the company's making what channels are making more investments in and how they're thinking about that, just given the current state of things.
Absolutely. Yeah. What's really interesting is that a lot of CPG companies, because they haven't been as focused on the consumer, they've been spending the bulk of their money for years behind paid media, because you can, grab a consumer's attention, and the thought has always been drive them to retail to make the purchase. So I think for organizations that are now taking a decisive shift to wanting to make sure that we understand the consumer as well and building that consumer relationship, there's a massive amount of change management internally that requires to make sure that we're now actually briefing agencies across the entire digital ecosystem, the entire comms ecosystem, not even just digital. How are we thinking about our websites? How are we thinking about email, community management? Because historically, when you're very focused on paid media only, it becomes very easy to sort of fall back on an MMM or an MTA in the US, right? It becomes very easy to fall back on those models and the ROIs you get out of those models to make all of your decisions look very, I've got a great ROI here, I'm just going to keep putting more money into that, when you can't measure community management the same way. I mean, you can't measure a piece of content that you're building to drive organic search on your website the same way, when you can't measure email the same way, it becomes like, if I had $1 to place in paid media or over here, where I don't have, it's like, I'm going to put it into paid media. So we've gone through a lot this year in terms of making sure that we are finding ways to measure the impact of other channels and the synergistic effects that exist across the entire landscape, so that we're understanding the role that paid and earned and owned and shared all have together. And that, I would say, is one of the most significant impacts on our organization heading into 2021 and 2022, is bringing a more holistic approach to our planning that is truly consumer centric. None of us experience a brand through paid advertising only, right? So we need to put ourselves in consumers' shoes and understand what that total ecosystem looks like, and what are the experiences that consumers expect from any brand today. We got to make sure that we're sort of living up to those expectations.
Yep. I think one final question might be an interesting one to close on. Someone asked if you had any bold predictions for the future of your industry, and maybe thinking about 2021, or even beyond. Anything big you think might happen?
Well, yeah. I mean, our innovation pipeline, I would say, has never been. We've never had more focus on it. I think there are a lot of interesting. For us, we live in the space that can very easily be, commoditized. And so we're always looking for ways to make sure that we don't fall into the sort of, as easily fall into the sort of space of like low consideration and sort of, so we're absolutely looking at our innovation pipeline, looking for ways to make sure that we can stand out from the crowd and create products and solutions, digital solutions that will create some breakthrough in the market. And I think all CPGs are sort of in a very similar spot there, where we're all sort of fighting for that sort of attention and looking for ways to sort of break through.
Hey guys, you know what
Hi.
that means. I really enjoyed this chat, guys. I think you did an excellent job, and it's interesting because with frictionless commerce, everybody's kind of going towards that. But it always amazes me with brands, especially like a lot of the brands in your portfolio, how much friction people will go through in order to grab it. And I'm just thinking about Huggies. It could be 3 a.m. and we're out of diapers. I'll drive to the store to get Huggies. The Whole Foods diaper is not going to do. Pampers isn't going to do. It has to be Huggies.
Yeah.
So anything that makes that easier is great. But the fact what you guys are doing to cultivate your brands, I think you get that stickiness. People will go. They'll climb mountains to get the Continental or the Huggies. But I think you guys do an excellent job with that.
Thank you. Yep. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah. Thanks, Toby. Always a pleasure.
Thanks Mike. Thanks,
Thank
Josh.
you. Yep. Thank you.
Okay, so moving on, we still have 2 great sessions ahead for us. A quick reminder to the audience that you can share today's link to friends and colleagues and have them tune in. That would be great. Take a second and do that. So now we're going to welcome Fabiola Velarde to the stage. Fabiola is Senior Director of Armani Retail in the Americas for Giorgio Armani. And this session will be moderated by Liam Osborne, who manages fashion and luxury clients for Media Monks. I personally love Armani. It was my first suit. Always admired Richard Gere. Always tried to look like him. Never really worked. But Liam, my colleague, he can pull these things off. He's absolutely awesome. Great style. So I want to welcome both of you to the stage, Fabiola and Liam. I'll let you take it away.
Thank you. Nice to meet you, Michael.
Thank you very much, Michael. Hello, Fabiola. How is it going with you today?
Hi, Liam. How are you? It's a great session
very
before,
good.
so I promise to do a good job as much as I can.
No, I'm very excited to have some time to chat with you broadly about the future of commerce, of retail, the trends you've seen over the years, and especially this year, which has been so challenging in so many ways for us, I would say, personally and professionally. So there's a lot to cover. And I would love to start off with when we talk about everywhere commerce, we mean that anything really can inspire a purchasing decision for a consumer. And as a brand, you need to make yourself as available to consumers in many, many different moments. And omni-channel thinking is very crucial to a brand being successful today. So I'd love to hear from you how Armani approaches omni-channel thinking and where you feel you excel as a brand.
Well, as you said, this year, totally unprecedented. Thinking that you could do retail, and I'm just talking about when you have a website, right? It's about like the whole community. We were locked down, and we actually in the company we never stopped working. We continue keeping our teams through all the lockdowns and ensuring that they were safe and connecting with them, and connecting with our internal clients, and of course hoping that we didn't have any disconnection with the external clients. So what we did during the lockdown time, it was to start, we were in the moment about implementing what it was the omni-channel, right, in the stores and all that. But in that moment, it was like we need to launch it despite whatever is happening. So it was about not only putting all the gears together and start activating what is the omni-channel, what we know, but also to train everybody to start thinking in omni-channel, right? To how we're going to be producing business. Well, first, we don't have our workplace, and for them, having no box, is like, now what? Yes, you can text to the clients and all that. So it was about like really a big shift, starting, you know, from in-house, starting from our teams, our internal clients, and developing that thinking, that we really understand that, well, first, you know, when you are in the brick and mortar, is you see e-commerce or online as kind of your enemy, because it's like you don't want to lose that connection with the client. You don't want to, and then of course, you know, is like, who is going to have the credit of
the sale?
That sale and all and that, when I know that my client is going to go, you know, and get the purchase. So it's about like the full understanding that there's no more online and the store, you know. Is, as we said, is the commerce, is the business, and it's about developing a 360 vision totally, so that they understand that going omni-channel, we go, and when we said omni-channel thinking, for example, in the house that we have three lines that combine the whole universe of us. It's about even start thinking on that. You know, it was a moment, even the what we are going to be offering our clients, that we are going to be connecting, not necessarily was, you know, the most luxury or high-end product that we have, but it was about like going and see what, you know, as a lifestyle we can continue connecting with our clients with. And at the end, it was going to be a win-win, but it was about the 360 vision totally. So we start with that in our community. And of course, now that everything, you know, the whole program is running, is okay. So now how we are going to connect the online into the stores. Something that our clients don't feel that is one more service or is automated, and that is at the end what is making, it's going to make the difference. And I have to say, not only with us, but in luxury, and I think what is my belief and my opinion is where retail is going to be moving, is giving the experience of to the client, again, in the whole circle. So instead of having someone, I would say the project and the challenge or the opportunity is that instead of having someone in the other overseas, or an automated icon or window that pop-ups and try to resolve your questions, it's about how I'm going to connect that client that right now is in New York to our store in New York, that they feel that they are connected. And so it's how I'm going to send a message to the client advisor. They're going to check their iPhone. They're going to answer, yes, I'm available. And in that moment, you go and ask the client if they want to have just, you know, a regular answer, or if they want to visit your store. And I think that is going to be the most interesting moment, when it's going to be, I think it has to be very smooth, but it's going to be the way that little by little, all of a sudden it was so, you know, we expedite the whole thing. But the client, without thinking, is going to be in that moment, you know? And I think that is, the other day we were saying is that, have you seen next year? I would say this is the renaissance or the evolution of something that at the end it was going to happen, but this year, I mean, if we put everything on the positive side, I will say that this year accelerates something that we were so afraid of even proposing or visioning or making it happen. And we were having a plan for 2 years, a year, 3 years. And all of a sudden it's like, next month we need to have it. How? I don't know. We just need to make it happen, you know? So, yes.
It's inspiring to hear that you as a company were receptive to the change. You didn't resist the fact that you had to have this omni-channel thinking. And I think that's a great segue into, you touched on it, about the physical and the digital. So the tension that was between, let's say, the e-commerce team and the retail team. And the fact of the matter that there's always been that interplay between those two worlds in fashion. And I guess the looking forward, it's how do you really connect digital to the brick and mortar? So I guess how do you see that continuing to evolve in the future?
Well, we have seen an evolution and a trend right now that everybody wants to have the virtual store. Yeah.
Right.
So amazing advertising about the store that Burberry, for example, opened in China, in Shanghai. Ralph Lauren just launched also, the website, and then you can visit the locations that you pick. We're doing the same. And that is great. That is great because, again, it's what I was telling you. It's about the continued effort that the client doesn't miss the opportunity of having you don't want that the client feel, again, all automatic. They need to have the DNA of the brand. That is what is going to continue giving the value of what to go to a product or doesn't matter the brand, but it's about that product that is a luxury. So it's a continued connection with that. How is going to happen? And I think that is, again, what is making the difference. But in order to continue or make it more real, that project, a year ago or 2 years ago, the trend that we were having, or the speech that we were all having, is like, oh, what is going to happen with the brick and mortar? It's going to disappear. The stores are going to disappear. I think the meaning of having a space, it has come more crucial than in the past. The combination of the digital part of going virtual, but also keeping the human touch. It has to go hand to hand, again, that we don't have the disconnection, that the client really feel that they are coming to our doors, to a Gucci door, doesn't matter where you shop, but that you feel part of them, right? And then also the service, the sophistication, the skills of those client advisors are going to be more mindful, because are the ones that are going to give they're going to give life to a product,
Absolutely. You can't replace one with the other, but they both need to be connected. And I agree with you. There's what you can experience in store with an amazing sales associate is you can't get that experience online. So people will continue to need to go into stores. It's just making sure that you have that connection between both worlds is very important. So
and I think I'm sorry. It will make the difference what is a mass fashion. You want to have a quick, the black crew neck sweater. You know where to buy it. Actually, you just press in Amazon, you put 2 words, and voila, you find the price and all that. When you really want the experience is when, let's say the phygital is come on board.
Absolutely. And I would like to chat a bit about, we touched upon this year being so big for society, not just retail, but having the pandemic and social movements, with all of this sort of purpose coming through and into the broader discourse. Have you seen at Armani new opportunities or new ways of speaking to your customers?
Yes. I don't want to say if it's new, because it's the brand. And our leader and the leadership of brand as a culture of the brand. It's ongoing, and it has been very authentic, since the foundation. But I think this is this year gave us the opportunity that the client see the brand more human, or see the human side in one-to-one level of the human side of the brand in this time. personalizing the service to those very loyal clients has been always key. But in this period, I will say that we even have to be very creative, design a new way or a better way or the right way to engage with the client through this process. I think it was an experience that, as we know, we were all in here. So it was about connecting with the client, telling them, and I will say the first time in a different way, we were not talk about product for a long time. We talk, the conversation with the clients is, how are you doing? Are you doing good? There was in this virtual day-to-day that we had with our teams, the conversations were like, well, I was on the phone with Mr. Smith, and all of a sudden it was about even going and getting the groceries. So instead of delivering our product, it was like, no worry about it, we will take care of you.
Oh wow!
So it was like to elevate the engagement or elevate the service into our clients, that they see us more human, or the human side, as I said, of the brand.
That is amazing, because it provides such a deeper relationship between brand and customer, and you're able to show up in different ways in their lives, which has so much added value, of course, commercially in the long run. But it's definitely, I think, an important thing for brands to consider when purpose matters to consumers more. We have choices in where we spend our dollars. So the brands that resonate beyond just their product are going to be super successful. So it's great to hear of the things that you guys have done for your customers this year.
Yeah, I think also, the way that our teams, our internal clients react, it was very rewarding, because it was about implementing all those initiatives or actions that our leader was having. We were one of the first brands to stop the runways. We were one of the first, or actually the first brand who was donating, to the cause. We were manufacturing immediately, in the factories PPE, and all those type of things that at the end it resonates into our internal community. That it was the way that or the conversations that we had to have with our clients. It was about to make those already relationships that we have with them in a way of we are here.
Right.
Also, another thing that changed, and I think that's for the whole industry, we were talking a lot about globalization. All of a sudden there was deglobalization. All of a sudden we have to look into our local market. We didn't have tourists, or was zero clients, and we have to see, evaluate like actually what clients we will have. And that was another very great exercise that we did, because we realized that it's not that the conception was wrong, but that we had more clients that we were just imagining that the whole city were based on tourists. And we found and we make it a stronger relationship with those clients that at the end were locals. Probably was a client that, because of their lifestyle, they were shopping in Las Vegas, but at the end we discovered that the client was in Chicago, and it was a local client. So it was about having all that exercise and reinforcing the relationship with our clients.
I think that's a great result of what, yes, was a tough period, but ultimately you're building bonds that will last and create stronger customers for you in the future.
Yes, I think as in the industry, to make a pause, fashion goes very, very, actually, for example, September. That was, I think, the best exercise that everybody could experience. Is not that fashion shows that we don't need a fashion show, but we adapt. We went through that. We show, we have the presence we show what is coming next. We were all very creative and showing our collection in a different way, virtual and digital. We create movies, we create shortcuts, but we realized that this moment that we pause make us think and make us evaluate what it was. I will say what those details or those areas of the business that were the ones or are the ones that are going to give us more value moving forward.
No, it's just seeing the opportunities that arise out of such a tough year, which is going to help every brand be more future-proof. I strongly believe that. And I'm wondering, in terms of after a purchase is made and looking at the full sort of life cycle of a consumer, whether it's aftercare or managing expectations with shipping updates or collecting feedback, were you surprised, or were there any interesting examples of something that Armani has experienced across the customer journey this year, because it was such an exceptional year, that anything sticks out that was surprising to you?
But we're surprised is that people were saying, thinking that everything is going to be like a sport wear, right? And then we are been very surprised that no, we yes, the lifestyle change, all the activities and parties and all that probably has changed a little bit, but the clients are still purchasing. They're not, maybe it's not the expand on things that you say doesn't matter if I have it or not, but they're expanding in the product that has more novelty, the product that is giving them desire. Another way that we've been working with our community is reimagining that a luxury piece that they had, that we know that they had it, and how we can add it into and reshape it, into their wardrobe.
Interesting.
And then given they're like really buying a lot of luxury product, not in a massive, but like at the very specific that give us that you feel that is giving you, part of your more individuality, more part of you, or an statement, let's say.
Interesting. So there's a movement to buying, let's say, less but better, in a sense.
Yes, with let's say less whimsical, but more with the value.
Interesting. Very interesting. And I mean, right now we are in the midst of what should be, it is the holiday season. This is when shopping is at its highest. But of course, this is a slightly different year. So do you think that, is this a regular holiday season for you guys in some aspects, despite the pandemic?
Different. We continue our calendar, but going with our clients' shopping behaviors, surprisingly, they're not expecting even a discount right now. The whole industry is running right now the sale campaign. But not necessarily. We are 60-40 with the full price, and that's another good surprise. So again, it's not about they are shopping, but they're not shopping because of the price point. They are shopping again. I think is more meaningful and more wise than in the past.
Interesting.
And I'm sorry. And we are focusing also with them because that for sure change. If the client comes to the store, it's a client that is going to purchase. The grocery shopping, I think that changed totally, so if you come to the store, you have to go through all the, I think make them feel safe. That is key now, and also is going to be part of our savings or our part of the routine. And it's going to be very, very important if the clients feel that your space is safe and you take all the guidelines and precautions. But once the client's in the store, you know that they're going to purchase, right? So it's about the put together the whole experience and for sure personalize that moment for them. We can cater the service according to each of them. And that also has changed.
Very interesting. And I would love to chat about, because one thing with fashion and luxury brands is they're aspirational worlds that people seek to be a part of and to be connected to. And I'm wondering how do you continue or sustain customer loyalty once they're in? How do you keep them in?
Well, I will say that now we have to keep not just the loyalty, but the connection with the brands through the culture, through social responsibility that we all have. We are seeing more and more the new clients, generation, very young clients, Generation Z. And those clients definitely are looking for brands that resonates with even their beliefs. We have to be very honest. I think that these are the moments that no brand or company can disguise a belief. I think everything has to be very transparent. So that is the way of that we connect right now. If you go through our website and in the social media, we have this project, the Green Project, that we donate, and we are participating in bringing more trees, and that's how our contribution. Also, we have this collection that is made out of 100% sustainable and recycle, RE. That's the name. And so it's about again, it's whatever we be involved or brands be involved, like very transparent and very honest, in order that the customers see, that we do care.
Yeah. And I was wondering if there was one big thing that you've learned as a company from COVID, in terms, it doesn't have to be limited to your retail spaces, but what would you think would be your big lesson learned this year?
The big lesson, I will say resilience. I think the unknown, I think, gave us a little of anxiety in the beginning, but then see how strong we could be and how I will put all the effort and all the value into our team and in our talent in the stores. I would say that the real moment, it was the reopenings. We were in the lockdown, we were training, we were talking, we were, all those things. Once we have to be back in what we said, we want to be back, when you have to be back with all the blocks that we had on our way, to have to wear a mask all day, the 8 hours that we have to take, all those guidelines that now are more into our routine. And yet connect with the clients, and yet redesign or reshape the business and catch up, for all those months that we were out of the business. It was scary for them, you could feel it, or it was not, they didn't express it, but it was like, okay, and then motivating and all that, and then to see that we were pulling off the results, or they were pulling results, with very successful. The clients were like really very receptive, adapting into, instead of a call, a regular call or text, transitional test, it was like really sending them videos, making virtual calls with them, connecting different. So to see how we were molded and they adapt, how resilient we are, the motivation and the great energy is still up. I think I think it's the more rewarding things that we can have and we can think of this year. I think at the end, all the brands, I would say retail, fashion, in general retail, I think all the brands could be very proud of the assets that we have that are our Salesforce team. And because they really were in our field, the frontliners, and the ones who were fighting and desiring that our business will not stop and we continue, and we can't, from the ones that we are behind, that we could reshaping the business and help them, but they were fighting in front line.
Yeah, they were at the front. And in terms of when, I don't want to ever say get back to normal because we just don't know what that will be, but is there anything in retail that you want to bring to that experience or that you think is going to start popping up there in the future that we hadn't seen before?
I think we haven't seen everything. I think retail is not changing. What retail is, the practices and all that. But I will say that what we can rescue and what is in the way that I hope and I believe that it comes retail is going back to the drafting board and rescue all those values that because of the pace maybe we lost. Look at our local client, and I think that what we call and we understand right as an experience start with the classic neighborhood store and service, that they know who you are, that they really understand the client and the client needs. But the digital, the virtual experience, the omni-channel and all that is going to be part of. But I think that all those practices now they're going to be more mindful in the human touch, So I think it's going to be the way that I picture it, or at least I want it, is retail and the client experience is going to be richer than in the past.
I would agree. I think it's going to be giving people a reason when they leave their homes or get out of our couches, give more of a rich experience when we go to the store, because it's, as you said before, it's not just going to be for browsing. I'm coming in with an intent to interact with your brand and to buy. So I think there's going to be great opportunities to make amazing collaborations and partnerships, which I get excited to think about what collaborations we're going to see more in the future in a retail sense.
Yeah, I think, well, when we said, for example, maybe you don't need 60 stores, but we will keep the stores that give value, to the brand, and maybe those that word that we all use now, the pop-ups, we will create those temporary stores, let's say in the small cities, or bringing and showing, again, creating the desire, bringing a new product, or giving new experience, to those clients, creating collaborations with between brands or between another fields, that there are things that are necessary, because why you need to be an expert in this area if we already have someone that is very strong on that. So it's about putting together our strengths, and then, I will say the globalization then is going to be transformed also through the practices and through the new partnerships. Until the traveling and all that, it will reshape again, what the shopping behaviors is going to happen.
Fully agree with you. And I was just thinking about my favorite part of a store is the window. And I think it's a very powerful way of communicating with customers. I'm wondering, is there anything differently that you guys have done with your windows given this year, or something that you're thinking of doing next year in a different way?
Well, in the traditional stores that we keep, we try to bring them with the luxury that we always dress our windows, especially for this time. But what we did is we did 2 pop-ups, one in Hamptons, East Hamptons, and now we are in Aspen. So totally different, as you said, different window in order that to be close where our customers are in this moment. But in the whole industry in New York, I can tell you that yes, there are differences. We are so spoiled here in New York in this time of the year. For example, with Bird of Command, that it has fantastic windows, and this year they're still beautiful, but they changed. They're more settled. They are more. There's no that super show that they have. Well, but I would say it goes with the time. They give you that color that we need in this time of the year. But it has transformed for sure. So this holiday season, it's still a little new. We're experiencing a new area, and but for sure, I would say in general, the whole industry and fashion and retail. When we say we become stronger, I think this has helped us in many ways, in many levels, to be more united, to see the customer different, to see our internal clients different, and the brands. I think they have shown, as I said, the human side that is also great to see.
Amazing. Well, I think we've reached the time for questions that have been submitted by our listeners. So I'm going to start firing them off. The first question is, how do you try to implement the luxury shopping experience online?
As I said, it's about connecting. We need it, but the whole industry is connecting the online with the stores. If they are not yet in the store, they are connecting the online with a client advisor live.
Right.
That way you don't feel, because if you see the screens, the online, at the end is flat, right? There's not that dimensional. So the luxury goes in terms that we connect the dimensional part of the business.
It's that human connection. Even if it's online, you're getting a person.
Yes, one of the ideas that we were having now that we were testing the virtual store, it was about not only send the link to the client go and browse, but it was about sending to the clients on one-to-one and navigate the virtual store with them, so you help them on shopping, right? So I still is the same service, well, not the same service because you're not in the store, but try to have that interaction, let's say the interaction that you will have with your client or your customer when they are with you in the store.
And in terms, can you highlight some of your most successful partnerships? Were there any that surprised you in terms of whether it was a media partner or any other type of partner that you've collaborated with in the past?
In the past or in this year?
Well, let's say this year.
This year, I would say the collaborations were internal. I think that, as I was saying, that's what I think the most successful partnership that we did was within our sister brands, and that's how we see that for sure we were stronger, and we were giving the clients the full universe despite a price point. So at the end, we were 24/7 for a client that probably were just focusing in one area. And when I said all the brands, we are talking about, you know, from the restaurant, because we have a restaurant as well. Yeah. So the full experience of accommodating our that would say that it would be a great partnership, for example, to have the connection with our clients through the restaurant, and delivering the full luxury experience in the let's say the brunch time, or connecting with them. So it was a way that they will never disconnect from the Armani universe.
Right, and that connects very nice to another question we got, which says, as e-commerce expands, how do you intend to expand your audience in terms of age and location? And I guess with the Armani universe, that's a whole opportunity of connecting to more people. So it'd be great to hear, how do you plan to expand?
Well, I can explain a project that we've been working. Now we're going to put in another, wider, now that the omnichannel has been launched in all our point of sales. But what we did is we knew in a moment we knew where our clients, we have all the data of our clients in the brick and mortar. So we connect, and then we review what we have and the demographic that we were having in the e-commerce. So now we are connecting that client into the demographics to the specific stores in order to make the full experience for them. So now we are reviewing if that client is shopping, X line. So we continue now the experience and engagement in the stores, even that maybe it was only a client from the e-commerce for the last 2 years. So now we are bringing them into a store level in order that they feel, again, the human touch of our brand.
Yeah, get them through the door, make them fall in love. And another question that we have is a bit more tactical about the challenges that you may be experiencing on your holiday shop strategy for this year. What are the biggest changes you've had from previous years, and do you predict sales to be lower for this holiday season than previous years?
I would say the quality of the sale has increased. So if we look at our KPIs in terms of our ABT has grow. The conversion is higher because of definitely the traffic overall is, you can go from 50 to 60% in the whole industry. Depends on the city. For example, New York, everybody is, if those stores on Fifth Avenue, you can think, at least 70% down in terms of the traffic because we don't have the tourists, or Hawaii, that there was a moment that there was like zero traffic at all. So, but the quality of our sales and the KPIs in terms of the qualitative, as they have been very good. We are very proud of that. They have increased. What was the other section of the question? Sorry.
It was our sales
and the challenge.
Lower.
The challenges. I will say that at this time of the year, we were prepared of that. One of the challenges for sure is that this pandemic is going, in waves, right? In circles. Yeah. So I would say that one of the challenges is how we can continue mitigating it, and that we continue having a plan. You know, if, for example, now it's about like if there's another lockdown, so now to have a plan ahead that we know to how we're going to be resolved. So that will be one of the challenges that the whole industry will have.
Amazing. I see our handsome host has rejoined, meaning we made it to the end of the session, but thank you, Fabiola.
I'm so sorry to interrupt because I love the conversation. And Fabiola, it's really interesting because you touched on that holy grail of everywhere commerce. You know, if I walk into an Armani store in the Hong Kong airport, I try something on, I really like it. I strike up a conversation with the sales associate, they give me water, but maybe I don't buy. And then I walk into your store in New York or I go online and it's the same experience. I think that's what everybody's striving for. And that's what we're tasked with at Media Monks to do. But, and I'm putting you on the spot, you don't have to answer, but are there any brands or other fashion brands that you admire that you think are doing a good job? Just curious.
Well, yes, I think Burberry is doing a great job. And actually is, I will say, positive surprise is that when everybody thought like, oh, Burberry, you know, is out of the game, all of a sudden through this period is when we saw Burberry, you know, speed ahead. Gucci, I think in the last 5 years has been constantly, and to see them reinforcing, you know, their strategy is not a surprise, but there is a fantastic job. And another brand that I will say that have a great exposure, took the right steps, and they had you know, great projects that they put out here is Prada. Prada also did a great strategy to be back in the game and ahead. I will say they are. I would say those are brands that we have to follow or we see, and it's great also, you know, to be in the industry and to see that despite all the odds and challenges and things that we saw, there are these organizations very strong, continue, you know, pushing and reinforcing that this is just a transition and go through this and life continue, you know.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. That's awesome. And Liam, thank you. You win for best WebEx background ever. That tree is phenomenal.
Thank you very much.
I want to thank you guys so much. So
it was a pleasure.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Bye.
So coming up, we have another exciting session. If you are posting about today's event, please use the hashtag BILivecast so we can see what you are saying. Please do that. So for our last session, we are joined by Evan Slater, amazing name, the Vice President of Global Marketing for Billabong. And this session is going to be moderated by the fabulous Tina Torres, Senior VP of Growth for Media Monks, my colleague and friend. So welcome to the stage, Evan and Tina. I'm going to turn it over to you, Tina, to introduce yourself and take it away.
Thank you so much, Michael. And so sorry, I don't have a tree in my background, but I'm a little late to that game.
No, we can't all be Liam.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping to offer some Zen. So.
And I'm in a very modest hotel room in Hawaii, so I couldn't stage a better background here either.
In Hawaii, though, nonetheless.
In Hawaii, though, exactly.
Evan, thank you so much for joining. As Michael said, I'm SVP of Strategic Partnerships and Growth here at Media Monks. I'm so happy that you and I get a chance to chat again. I'd love it if we start off, maybe everyone possibly doesn't know so much about your background. So maybe talking a little about your journey and the time you spent at Hurley and how that helped shape your now amazing role at Billabong. Let's just dig in.
Yeah, just a quick recap of my career. I actually fell in love with surfing first at a very young age, and sort of most decisions I made in life were, especially career-wise, were around trying to figure out how I could stay connected to the sport in some way. So through my high school years, I was highly competitive and competed in a lot of national events and that kind of thing. And when it came time to graduate from high school, I realized that I wasn't Kelly Slater. I was actually Evan Slater. So I didn't go on tour. I went to college instead, and just figured out a path to marry my passion with my work. And it really came down to a love for writing, a love for curiosity about how people work together. And it sort of molded into this role where I initially started in surf media at Surfer Magazine in the late 90s, and was basically a part of the surf media for the better part of a decade. That skill set was transitioned over to the brand side. I ended up making a move in 2009 to Hurley, and I really found over time and now more than ever, having that sort of editor's mindset, that journalistic mindset is really effective in brand marketing today.
I love that you said that. That's good.
And then just quickly, so I was at Hurley for 10 years, pretty closely connected with Nike, which was our parent company. So learned a lot under them. And then 2 years ago, I made the transition over to Billabong with a similar role, but different brand in our space, and it's been a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Knowing that you have sort of that editorial mindset, obviously that experience, how has that sort of helped shape product and, dare I say, product storytelling, which a lot of brands sort of either fear doing or feel that storytelling in product land doesn't really exist or need to exist? What's your positioning there?
Well, I one thing is as a marketer and joining a brand that you believe in is probably like number one, especially with that journalistic instinct. I have trouble marketing things that I don't believe in. But that being said, it really is important to kind of look at what the end result will be of marketing a product, and how not only consumers are going to react, but media, because that's the ultimate BS detector, right? Is how media respond to things, especially if it's just organic and you're not paying them to say great things about you. So at the end of the day, I'm always going, okay, what are the cynical journalists that I used to be? What are they going to say about these product stories that we're making? And it tends to work out pretty well, especially when you're working hand in hand with the product team from the very beginning on developing these stories, and not just sort of taking what they created in a vacuum and trying to market it.
It's interesting. I always think of Billabong as sort of a legacy brand, but it's a brand that has always remained relevant and has continued to sort of, dare I say, even drive trends in the space, especially with the surfer community. I would love to know, how do you stay relevant? How do you stay relevant in such a time and really don't help to segment your audience? How are you continuing to gain reach?
Yeah, it's interesting, and I think it really starts with the mission statement of the brand, and it's been this since as long as I think anybody who works there can remember, that the goal of Billabong is to inspire youth through progressive surf culture. So what that means is we want to be very sharp on surf culture and driving that forward, but the hope is that it's so appealing and so amazing and inspirational that it reaches out to a broader youth culture. And really, we emphasize the youth because our founder is 100% about looking forward and not about looking back. The second we propose any kind of nostalgic retro kind of thing, he'd be the first one to call us out and tell us, use your legacy to your advantage, but don't be defined by it. And I think that's how we're effective with being a legacy brand, but not resting on those laurels, and actually using it as part of the arsenal of our storytelling, but not leading with it. That makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. I love that your motto is know the feeling, and some of your campaign taglines, like living life in board shorts, it sort of all resonates and ladders up to that umbrella story. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's interesting. So one of the most famous taglines, and probably in the surf industry of all time, was the one that our founder came up with back in I think it's the 80s. And it was only a surfer knows the feeling, which today, if you think about it through the lens of just, modern times, it's a little bit exclusive. So at a certain point, we kind of broaden that to just know the feeling. So our vision for the brand is just to help create a world where everyone knows this magic feeling of riding a wave, whether it be metaphorical or actual physical. And so that has been something that just is our North Star in everything we say, make, and do. And feel like it's pretty effective because we have that very sharp point of view that we try to stay true to, but also knowing that, hey, this is a lifestyle, this is an industry for everybody, and how can we diversify our storytelling to make everybody feel included? Because surfing is a magic sport, and we try to provide products to help make it even more magic.
Dare I say, I've never surfed because I fear the enormous waves. What would you tell someone who's a little fearful, but wants to explore that sense of freedom?
Yeah. And I will say we're not just about like, if you don't want to go surfing, you're not a part of the brand, but it's just more being that ocean inspired, consumer that the carefree lifestyle of the surf world is kind of what we're trying to capture. But as far as like the actual, hey, how do you go and learn to surf or access that? There's more and more touch points and places that any non-surfer can go that would get an experience that would last a lifetime for them, through like lessons in different places there's wave pools sprouting up everywhere now. So it's pretty exciting to see how many surfers are on the planet now, and continues to grow.
Super fair. And Hawaii has some of the best surfers in the world and surfing in the world, right? So you're positioned currently accordingly.
Yes.
That said, I'd love to sort of pivot a little bit,
Sure.
knowing that we're currently in a time of COVID, and for most, the first pandemic that we've ever experienced. How would you say that's affected some of your current e-commerce marketing and just traction?
Yeah, I think that the COVID situation, more than anything, just accelerated a lot of what we were already doing, and that we were leading with our digital storytelling. We were, and basically an entire channel, which is our wholesale and even our physical retail channels, were shut down for an extended period. So what does that mean? Well, more than ever, this whole, like I said, this editorial mindset around how can we communicate and connect with our consumer in a brand right way every single day while still, driving e-commerce goals, became the task. And so it really was mapping out, the upcoming months in a way that has the bigger story that we're trying to capture for an extended period of time. But then how does that click down each and every day around our key products for those different seasons, while at the same time being aware of all the other challenges that brands face during this time, almost thinking like an editor as well, from the social the social demonstrations during the summer to all the COVID stuff. The list goes on. And as a brand, never before have the spotlight been turned back on the brand, and consumers asking, how are you going to respond to this?
Yeah. How are you going to show up?
Yes. Yeah. So I'd say we just doubled down on what kind of we were already doing. And I think on the back end of this, it's made us even stronger going into 2021, as hopefully things start to open back up and, go back to normalcy, that we continue a lot of the practices that we developed, over this time.
Have there been any surprises, Evan, during this time of our, quote unquote, new normal? Any current trends that surprises you?
I would just say it's interesting because, instinctually you're going to say, okay, everybody's going to shut down, and video games are going to go, off the charts, and, people are just going to continue to buy like sweats and all that. But what you saw this year was a certain level of fatigue in and that obviously, with people being locked down for so long.
Absolutely.
In our space, we saw a crazy amount of hard goods being sold, more than ever before. And what I say is hard goods is surfboards and bodyboards and all the equipment that you use to ride waves. Has just gone through the roof. You can't, like, a lot of these certain companies just can't keep them in stock. And I think that's because, well, hey, obviously there's certain levels of people not working, and then also just this fatigue of just being stuck inside. People want to go outside and experience real things. And so, naturally, what the products that we make are, wetsuits and board shorts and apparel to support the surf lifestyle. So we also saw that just particularly wetsuits go through the roof, through this COVID period, direct through e-commerce.
Well, people tend to have a little bit more time, right? But they also need a little bit of, I don't know, cognitive relaxation or reset, right? So that may be where the water comes into play. So that's really good to hear. Knowing that obviously conversion isn't everything, and it's very powerful what you said. There's an element of storytelling and personalization and really meeting the consumer where they are at the right moment, at the right time, with the right message. That said, are there any maybe shopping experiences that Billabong provides that you would love to push a little further? Or are there any brands that are doing it well that inspire you?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because since I've, going back even to my days at Hurley, we're still trying to figure out the loyalty model that really resonates with consumers and is super powerful. You look at some of these like omnipresent brands that, consumers use every single day, like Starbucks or Visa or Shell Oil or whatever. Like their loyalty programs are pretty sophisticated when you think about it. Whereas apparel brands generally are pretty far behind, barring some of the more recently sprouted up DTC brands. And so that's a number one priority for us because we have such a massive or a significant physical retail footprint, along with there's a growing digital, like a percentage of our digital business being part of the broader business, that we just see, a crazy opportunity and us being able to create it exists currently, but it's just, we want to keep doubling down on that and creating a better experience for anybody who walks into a Billabong store, anybody who goes to billabong.com. They are treated as a crew member, and really feel the benefits of that. And it's consistent across all channels.
That's important and key for sure. Knowing that you are a significant retail establishment as well as online presence, and you've actually rooted a huge footprint in the market, that market is such a crowded space. Talk to me a little bit about how you differentiate yourselves in the category. What's unique?
Yeah, it's funny because in any industry, the objective consumer can look at it and go, oh, it's all the same, right? But obviously, when you're within an industry, you're going to be like, no, this is why we're the leader of the pack and why we differentiate ourselves from everybody else. So I'm very mindful of that. I'd say if I'm thinking about Billabong and those key differentiators, a couple of things. One is authenticity. So our founder is, founded the brand in 1973. While he's not working day to day, he's probably our loudest critic, but also advocate, right? So,
they usually are.
Yes, and so he's very involved, and we can always kind of revert back to Gordon and what would Gordon say or whatever if we feel like we're like kind of drifting, right? So that's one. Second is every function within this brand is very tightly knit. That's across sales, marketing, and the product engine. And so we think about strategy and long-term like brand health. So we're very passionate about the quality of the brand for the long term, and we've seen the pitfalls of other brands in our space, either over distributing or discounting too much and that kind of thing. And so we're I think strategically we're very just very on point and on top of that part, because you got to look at the long term. You can't just try to meet. Obviously, we have the luxury of not being publicly owned, but not having to meet numbers by quarter is a huge advantage for us.
Absolutely.
And then the last thing is consistency. So while we are always about like adding new progressive surf culture to the world and great product stories and all that, and continuing to drive everything forward, the brand's had quite a few regime changes over the last 2 decades, but there have been a few core teammates there who have sort of held the brand DNA there and the values of the brand intact. And so as different members come in, they're very great about just keeping us pointed toward the right North Star. And that being said, the team that we have now is again one of the most collaborative, probably the most collaborative team I've ever worked with across all functions, which is great, like the best. I'm having the best work life of my life right now.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah,
that's amazing. And not many can say that at this time. So I think that's super powerful. Dare I ask you, do you have any work that you'd like to share that's been most inspiring or that's been just the most challenging?
Yeah, I keep going back to this like editor's mindset thing. And I think particularly brands in our space, apparel brands, aside from some of those sport-driven brands, I think Nike's the best at doing this. But again, anticipating moments and being ready to respond and serve the consumer in a powerful way. I did have an example with just a few slides, and I can go through them quickly. Just about and I'll give some context, but it was a world title / world champ moment for the brand with one of our athletes at an event that we sponsored in Hawaii, which was actually 2019, the exact same time last year. So I'm over here for the same event. But I can talk through that and just give a quick overview of how we executed on this plan that wasn't guaranteed, right? It was just a scenario that we had to be prepared for.
Awesome. Let me see if I can share some work. 1 second. Oh, it seems to not be allowing me to share.
Okay. That's fine.
But it was beautiful. Problem. A few slides.
All good.
Maybe we can talk a little bit narratively around.
Yeah, I thought a couple of visuals would have helped, but all good. So we have a Brazilian surfer, and his name is Italo Ferreira, and he kind of came out of nowhere, and suddenly toward the end of 2019, he was in a really good spot to potentially win the world title, which in surfing is a big deal. It's like the thing, and if your brand is associated with that world champion, it's something. Oh, I think you have it there. Oh, this was just like from a quick, a few slides from a recap deck. But so if you go to the next slide. Okay. So basically, obviously, going into an event, we invest a pretty good amount of money to be a title sponsor of what is this. It's called the Billabong Pipe Masters in Hawaii. It's sort of the Super Bowl of surfing. Traditionally, it's the end event of the tour in any given year, and it's where world champions are decided. So, we knew that our guy Italo had a chance to win the world title going into the last event. So we just needed to prepare for that. So basically, we created a whole marketing campaign on the beach where we put the entire beach, which has about 25,000 spectators, wearing these tie-dye green and yellow shirts. We kind of created a more of a people's champ kind of personality around him. One of the the idiosyncrasies of Brazilian world tour surfers is instead of saying stoked, which is a surf word that you've heard, they say stoke it. Stoke it. And so, we got Italo's approval, and we did this whole Stoke It campaign, and people just loved it. And so basically they were watching as Italo went, through the journey of getting to the finals in the event and going up against the guy that was his rival, and he was the world title depended on this last final and who won. He ended up winning. We made sure that the celebration was seen on this webcast, which has about 6 million people watching on the beach. And then from there, you could go to the next slide. And so this is right at the moment, like you see the beach like littered in flags and wearing these shirts. And so this is on the webcast, and all kinds of people were cheering. And then go to the next slide. So within 10 minutes, we had a whole digital campaign around Italo surfing. And this was all of our athletes participating, men and women, just talking about, who this guy was and what words came to mind when he's on a wave. And this, had a huge amount of engagement. And we also posted in real time the actual moment when he came to the beach and went crazy. So a bunch of digital content that we pushed out right as the event happened. And then, so that's 10 minutes in, and then you go to the next. So, and within 2 hours, we had the actual world champ. So we didn't print the world champ part. We just had, the Italo face and his name with Billabong, but we had all these other shirts ready to go that said world champ on it. We put these on billabong.com in under 2 hours around the world in all of our key markets. And the sales went through, again, just like, I think it sold through like 273% or something. It's not crazy numbers because it's just a t-shirt, right? But it did remarkably well in my experience of selling world champ gear. I've never seen the kind of engagement and conversion around title memorabilia and surfing. So it felt really good to just hit all the points and really think through the journey from start to finish and just be ready to pull the trigger, knowing that, hey, it might not even happen, right? And that's how editors have to think. They always have to think of all the different scenarios and how they're going to respond with their storylines and their headlines.
That's super fair, and thank goodness he won.
Thank goodness he won. It was kind of a fairy tale ending, and we had, obviously backup plans if he didn't win, but it was nice to see it all play out like we had hoped it. Better than scripted, actually.
And Evan, when you're sort of thinking about this, I'll call it econometric model, if you will, are you also thinking about outside of just website and your e-commerce platforms? You're obviously also selling on Amazon properties and that sort. Are you thinking about the full connected experience? So how this shows up on social, how does it show up within, CRM or banner units, et cetera?
Yeah, so one of the advantages within our brand is that we are very brand led. So any communication that goes out, regardless of the touch point, does have to go through brand, and we have to help guide that. It gets trickier and trickier as you see these just these data sets that come back and say, hey, we're selling underwear really well. Can we do an underwear campaign? And we're like, no, that doesn't make sense. But maybe we can, when we come up with an alternative to drive more commerce around something that's not necessarily brand led, right?
Sure.
So I think it's really important now more than ever for the brand to think about every single touch point and being consistent across all of those. Now, where you do lose some of that control is those broader digital e-commerce channels like Amazon, but we work very hard to try to keep it as consistent as possible.
Yes, it looks very uniformed, if you will.
Yes. Yeah.
Cool. I think we can stop the share of the work.
Great.
My next question would be thinking about inspiring folks through that customer decision journey, if you will, on to purchase or not. Something other brands do is they think about that full journey and think about folks want to know, especially the younger generation now, how are the things made? Where is it made? Sustainability, what cultural presence is bringing that brand bringing forward? Aftercare, current care. Tell me a little bit about that thinking and how that comes to life at Billabong.
Yeah, I mean, we with ecom, we have a pretty extensive team who just lives and breathes the data, right, and tries to think about a better customer experience. When it comes to communication and how we're offering up these services, it always goes back to the brand, right? So, and it's which is awesome that we have that partnership, because how we always look, the lens that we look at through everything that we do is through this target 19-year-old consumer. Call him Jimmy, and everybody knows within our brand who Jimmy is. And if Jimmy's not, if he sees something that is, doesn't feel like his brand from Billabong, we've failed. And so we continue to ask, what would Jimmy say about that or this or that? And it's a pretty fun exercise, because we have this consensus on who Jimmy is. And there's going to be regions that try to broaden the definition of Jimmy, but we always try to keep it as tight as possible, if that makes sense.
Yes, that definitely makes sense. What advice, Evan, you have such a breadth of experience. What advice, if any, would you give current marketers sitting in your footsteps, if you will, or even future marketers that are thinking about entering the product world?
Yeah, I think it's easy for marketers to get caught up in tools that are like these magic tools to, convert customers or, gain more, bigger audience. And there's also best practices that have to follow. But all that stuff, regardless of what time, that the new platform of the day is around, I'd say an amazing story timed right will always win. So always have to go back to that, and you can convince yourself that something is that your brand is getting behind is the next best thing. But you always have to kind of look at it with a little bit of a cynical eye, and always try to understand how the customer is going to respond, how the media is going to respond as objectively as possible.
Absolutely. And I think everyone is so keen to talk about data-driven theories and data-driven product and service placement, but people sort of forget we're marketing to humans. There's a human-to-human element. So the fact that you're still using that data, but then applying it in a very connected, very human experience way, and you are always thinking about how you want that human to talk about your brand and what behavior you want them to execute or manifest. I think that sort of also separates you and differentiates you as a brand. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd say one more thing too, is advice is it's more important than ever for brands to work like a living, breathing organism across all functions, right? We are, brands are these things, right? And they're not conveyor belts where they just sort of get stamped along the way and everybody does their little piece to it. So working in silos more than ever just doesn't work. As a marketer, you should make sure that you care about all aspects of the business and try to work with all the functions to make the brand better and more emotionally connected to the consumer.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I've worked at many agencies, and one of the sort of challenges I always found was that strategy as a function or discipline was always a standalone unit, and then you bring creative into the fold. And I always love, one of the things we do at Media Monks so well is strategy, creative, and user experience is all started as a function together, as a very agile, lean team, because then that's how you get the best product storytelling, right? And you have your anchors, your KPIs. Super powerful.
Exactly. Yeah, just like you said, my hackles go up a little bit when somebody will be like, so what's the creative? Like, no, what's the story? That's where you start, and then it all comes to life.
Yes. Agreed.
Yes.
I have one last question for you, and then there's been a few questions coming in, so we'll go over to that. But one question I love to end on is, essentially, I believe that everyone has a brand. You have a personal brand, then you have a brand that you sort of build together through your working through your career journey, et cetera. That said, what would you want your legacy to be?
Like I said at the beginning, this all started with falling in love with the sport of surfing. So I've always felt like in some shape or form, I'm a caretaker of the sport and culture. Whether I'm selling board shorts or as an editor or whatever it might be. So hopefully my legacy is that I was passionate about the sport, about the culture, and that I left it in a better place than I found it. That is if I ever leave it, which I don't think I will until I'm not around anymore.
That's awesome. Oh, Michael V. Hello. Yes, we did work together at McGarry Bowen. Thanks for tuning in. Michael would love to know, he loves your tagline, by the way. He has a question around, will Billabong and their plans be environmentally focused as surfer numbers are growing astronomically? What are your plans in the sort of sustainability community?
It's a huge priority for us, and it really starts with the products that we make and making those more and more sustainable and just environmentally conscious. So we have actually, over the years, have gotten to a point that where all of our board shorts are made from recycled plastics, every single one. We make all of our wetsuits are now made with recycled materials. And each and every year, we continue to try to ramp that up to just lighten the footprint of our products through recycled materials and also just sustainable materials. We just launched a wetsuit in November. We call it the Natural, that actually has this enzyme called cyclo in it, which degrades the wetsuit almost like biodegrades, so that there's no like plastic particles left as the final end product. So it's clearly our product teams are passionate about finding better solutions around more environmental products.
That's awesome. Another question is, someone's asking, would there ever be a place for AR and Billabong? Do you think that we can partner together and draw greater experiences through the world and lens of AR?
Yeah. It's funny. I've dabbled with the concept a number of times because I think there's massive potential there. Definitely not closed-minded to it, because I think, when you go back to this idea of a world where everyone knows the feeling, AR is a great way to achieve that. So figuring out the right plan around that is certainly something we're open to.
Awesome. In the philanthropic space, Billabong has been a huge, again, community activist and very much focused on the humane aspect and bringing people together. Is there anything future that you can talk about? Anything coming up?
We try to we have a motto that's protect the places we play, and so we look for the like-minded partners that that we can help support to make our oceans cleaner, and then more recently to make a broader, diverse culture, right? So as we've seen the events of 2020, it's really forced us to look in the mirror and go, are we really doing everything we can to create a more diverse surfing culture? So we've been partnering up with a few mentoring organizations that take kids surfing, have like surf that are connected with the school systems and surf PE classes, and then they, inner city kids, and it's been a lot of fun just kind of trying to broaden our aperture and how we can give back. But there's the environmental front, and then there's also the diversity and inclusion front, which we're putting a lot of time into and resources.
Awesome. And obviously it sounds like one of my famous hashtags are hashtag pay it forward. So it sounds like Billabong is huge on the pay it forward aspect. So that's really positive to hear. 2 more questions, Evan. Thank you so much for hanging in there.
Sure.
How are you determining where to spend time on emerging technologies?
I tend, so just through experience, I haven't, I would say our marketing budgets don't allow us to take a lot of crazy bets, but we're very mindful of where consumers are and how we can better serve them. So it's I would say a cautious but open-minded approach to putting resources into new technology.
Super fair. And I'm sure fiscally responsible. So that makes sense. Last question would be, what innovations and technologies are you utilizing to execute your current strategies? And has that changed since the pandemic began?
No, it hasn't changed since the pandemic began. I'd say we obviously have like social media manager platforms that we use. We have our e-com insight platforms that are all used. I don't necessarily want to say which ones we're using because I don't want to get in that world, but it's definitely most of our insights are coming back from the digital function within our organization.
Any predictions, Evan? Any predictions on the future of e-commerce, the future of how folks are consuming content, and really how are we affecting their purchase path?
Yeah, I just think there's so much out there that there's going to be, I think, a stronger filter on what's relevant and what's not. And it's just being mindful of like not overwhelming consumers with just stuff and trying to have a consistent message, but also do it in a way that you're not going to say anything unless you think it's really going to connect with somebody or help them, right? You're not just trying to push stuff on them. And so I think there's definitely going to be more mindfulness, at least on our side, about that as we go, and just even doubling down on just brand leading with brand, obviously through digital.
Well said. I see our lovely host is back, Michael.
I'm here.
So,
guys, that was absolutely amazing. Evan, Tina, thank you. And Evan, I had a quick question. I don't know if the connection's breaking up, but the last time I was on Brand Innovators, I was a moderator with marketing for Taco Bell. And she talked about how a lot of the times she'll just produce cool stuff and there is no KPIs attached to it. It's just for brand building. And there's no thought of like everywhere commerce. We don't want to sell. We just want to delight. Philosophically, how do you balance that as a marketer between having to sell stuff and then just making really cool stuff with no agenda?
Yeah, it's funny. I think there is a way to achieve, both that and commerce at the same time, more and more, especially if you're very closely connected to the product team from start to finish. But we certainly think about those surprise and delight moments, particularly around places where our consumers are, or events that are very endemic but large to our space. I can think back to what's called the U.S. Open of Surfing in Huntington Beach a couple of years, or I think it was last summer, or 2019, where this is an event that has like 100,000 people on the beach. Wasn't our event. We didn't sponsor it, but as like a bit of a guerrilla marketing type of exercise, we would go down and airdrop photos that said, "Come and create your custom board short" across the street at the Billabong shop. And when they would come over, we had one of our top team writers there. So it's like, imagine having LeBron James, maybe not LeBron James, but somebody of that like stature within the surf world, waiting for that kid to come and design his own custom board shorts and give a high five to one of our guys. And stuff like that is a lot of fun. And I would say that's the kind of brand building we do. It's like still connected to commerce in some way. Like he went through the customization experience, but we connected him to the brand and to one of our team writers, which, is something that kid will never forget.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Thanks for sharing that. Evan, thank you. Tina, as always, it's a pleasure.
Thank you.
To everybody watching, if you liked what Tina and I talked about or what Evan talked about, please connect with us on LinkedIn. We'd love to continue the conversation. I do want to wish everyone a wonderful holiday season that we're entering into, and I want to give a special thank you to Brand Innovators. Their events are absolutely wonderful, and you start to see this common thread with these great minds who are sharing these amazing insights with us, and it just makes us better at our job. So thank you to Brand Innovators. They have more sessions coming up. I really recommend you guys watching it and subscribing to their newsletter. And to my colleagues at Media Monks, thank you once again for letting me host this. I hope you enjoyed it. And again, thank you. I'm going to wrap it up with that. Fini.